Okay. Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this overview and scrutiny meeting of BCP Council, the first of today's sessions. I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to those residents who are watching this meeting from home. It's really good to see that some residents are showing an interest in this board. I think what we'll do is just go to Jill Hollyoak, our Democratic Services Officer today, and ask her to read some housekeeping notes for us. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Chairman. Please note that this meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Board is being recorded by the Council for live broadcast and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. Please could everyone present follow these ground rules. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman. If accessing via Teams, always turn on your video function when invited to speak and state your name. Please use your microphones when speaking and please mute or turn off your microphone when you are not talking. If accessing via Teams and you would like to speak on an item, please do so by utilising the raise your hand feature in the bar at the top of the Teams window. Please refrain from using the chat function in Teams except for recording a proposed motion. If a vote is required on any issue, the Democratic Services Officer will call out each member's name in turn, starting with the Chairman and Vice Chair. Please respond with for, against or abstain. For those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the ground floor of the multi-storey car park. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Please note that this includes members' laptops. Please turn off laptop cameras and microphones and turn the volume all the way down to ensure there is no disruption or feedback during the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Jill. Agenda item 1, are there any apologies today, please, Jill?
Yes, there are apologies from Councillor Leslie Dedman and Councillor Mike Cox.
Thank you. And do we have any substitute members?
We do. Councillor Simon McCormack is here for Councillor Dedman and Councillor Richard Burton is here for Councillor Cox.
Thank you very much. So, members, agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do any councillors here have any disclosable pecuniary interest or any other interest or any other item on the agenda? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Just for reasons of transparency, a relative of mine works for BCP Council.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Agenda item 4. Agenda item 4, confirmation of minutes and action sheet. I'll take the minutes first. This was the meeting held on the 19th of July 2021. Members, does anybody have any comments they'd like to make? It's the minutes, please. No, appears not. Okay, then in that case, I'll go on to item 4A, which is the action sheet. And there are a couple of actions I just want to comment on. The first action was raised on the 14th of June, and it related to the approval of the 5-year BDC business plan and a question over the contribution to affordable housing, which was partly actioned at our last meeting by Councillor Broadhead, and we're still waiting for a final response from him. I've not had that, so we'll have to park that, I'm afraid, until the next meeting. The next action was from the 19th of July meeting, which was item 43A, and this related to the Pool Quay toilets, which had been closed for a number of years, and I undertook to write to the head of planning to see what the current status was and get a fuller explanation of what was going on there. I'm delighted to say that the toilets are now open. There are still some outstanding issues which are still being staffed by officers, but essentially they are now open, which I think is a good thing. I know that 1 or 2 members are following up with head of planning regarding some of the more detailed aspects of that. The other element of the action for head of planning was the issue of the monitoring of enforcement actions arising from planning decisions. I have written to officers about this, and we're actually looking at the planning performance overall again in November. So what we'll do is we'll park that issue, which is not yet fully addressed, and we'll discuss it at that meeting. So I think for the time being, we won't close that one off completely. I think we'll just hold that in abeyance until that meeting. And I think we had one more action arising from the meeting on the 19th, which related to this is about financial agreements and when they were signed, and there was some concern that these were being signed later than they ought to be, and the council's interest may not be being protected by the rather late agreements between parties. I have had a response, thank you, from the monitoring officer, who has explained the situation in detail on the two specific cases that were mentioned. And I understand there is actually a meeting later today where this will be an agenda item at the executive board, or senior members of the council will be discussing this. So I think it's recognised that, and I won't go into the detail of the two specific cases that have been raised. They still haven't been fully cleared off. To be fair, they're still in work, but there are some very good reasons why they are in work. For example, detailed changes over the lease. For Longspeed School, for example, and some additions to some of the structural changes to the buildings are still being staffed. So there are one or two details which are still preventing the final sign off of those. But nevertheless, it does remain of concern, but we'll leave it for officers at the moment to come back to us again when they have an idea, a better idea of where they're going to go with that. Sorry, Councillor Slade, you wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, I do want to comment on that one, if that's okay, Chair. The item above it, 46 and 7, which was related to the item on the local plan working group. We were all very concerned that the working group should have oversight of the housing needs assessment document that the consultants were supposed to have delivered. We were told end of July, early August was that. It's now almost the end of August. I understand that the working group members have not had any communication at all in relation to that document. They have chased it up. I'm just wondering whether, I think you're on that working group, Chair, whether it might be prudent to get that chased up, as it's almost September, and that will then cause a delay to the commencement of the consultation, I believe, which was due to go out in September.
Yeah, it's not unreasonable to ask for an update on where we are with that programme. You're right, I am on that working group. I've not heard anything, and I assume that you've spoken to the chairman, and he's probably confirmed the same.
I have spoken to the chair, and I have spoken to Councillor Phipps, who provided the portfolio holder and the head of planning with another document that related to this matter, and hasn't had any communication back from them as yet.
Okay, I think what I'll do is take an action to write to the portfolio holder on this to see where we are with that particular document, and the when we can expect the working group to sit again to consider that before the official consultation document is released. Thank you. Thank you. I think that concludes the actions then, well, the outstanding actions. So we'll now come on to agenda item 5, public issues. Jill, are you aware of any public issues?
No, Chairman, there are no public questions, statements or petitions for this meeting.
Thank you. Agenda item 6 is the forward plan. This has recently been updated, and the latest version of it was put on the website. So, members, has anybody got any questions they'd like to raise against the forward plan? Councillor Howell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We are coming towards the end of the first year of the Leeds members' appointment, and I'm not aware of anywhere within the constitutional process where those Leeds members are asked to present a report on what they've achieved and have questions asked of them. So I was wondering if we could schedule in a such an event within the Overview and Scrutiny Board.
One of the issues is that the forward plan is absolutely chock-a-block actually until at least the new year, and we're struggling to actually meet the commitments that we've already made.
I do feel it's important that they were quite controversial appointments initially, and I think some of them relate to some really quite important objectives of the council. So I feel that there needs to be some form of scrutiny.
I think, to be fair, some of the work that the lead members have already been involved with have come across them through the board in a number of different ways, and their contributions have been there and will continue. We have a paper coming forward on high streets, for example, shortly. We've already had one discussion of it here. Other members, could I have the views from other members on what Councillor Howell is asking for? Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you. I don't think all members were over concerned about the appointment of lead portfolio lead holders. From my point of view, I clearly understood the amount of work that was to be carried out by the portfolio holders and the additional support that was to be given to the other activities. I thought that was a wise decision. There has been a number of lead portfolio involvement. There have been a number of reports come out to do with the beach, the coastal areas, etc., all of which I've read and would acknowledge the contribution made. I don't actually see the point in reviewing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Anybody else? Okay, our leader of council is online. I think it's not unreasonable to ask him for his view on that. Leader, Councillor Mellor, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, being called in briefly. My view very much is that the work of the Cabinet is supported by lead members. So the Cabinet forward plan, the Cabinet workload, we've had really clear areas where that's been led, largely by lead members. If you look at the stuff that's come forward in homelessness, the health hub we just purchased, in the process of purchasing, the equalities paper at the last Cabinet meeting. You yourself, Chair, mentioned the High Streets piece. We've talked about events. You've seen what's happening in Festival Coast Live. Various reports on regeneration, etc. We've got a net gain paper coming forward in the next couple of months around biodiversity. I think the evidence is there, Chair, and the committee has the right opportunity to scrutinise it as the papers are coming forward. If at any point members would like to spend more time in all member seminars, I know your Vice Chair's sort of criticised the amount of all member seminars we're having, but if that would be useful, we're more than happy to step up more interaction as your members see fit, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Miller. Councillor Slade.
Thank you, Chair. I think what's being requested is something quite different from member seminars. A member seminar is very different from scrutiny. I don't think, I think that the comment about feeling that some of the member seminars are not helpful is an irrelevance in terms of what we scrutinise and what we don't scrutinise. My concern is that there may well have been a lot of involvement in some of the lead members in the work coming through, but we aren't seeing or hearing from those lead members. The exception to that would absolutely be our homelessness lead. She's been fantastic, but some of the others have been conspicuous by their absence in the papers that they have apparently co-written. And if they, the allegation is they weren't invited to scrutiny. Every member is invited to scrutiny. Every member can ask to speak. If the lead members don't sit with their portfolio holder, then it is very difficult for us to understand what their contribution has been. So I don't think it's an unreasonable ask, but I wonder whether we could repeat the offer that where a lead member has had influence and input into a paper, that there is an automatic suggestion that they attend ONS along with the portfolio holder as a matter of course. That way we would be able to talk to both the portfolio holder and the lead member about the matter rather than speak about them in their absence, which doesn't feel particularly polite, but we have no choice if they don't attend.
Thank you, Councillor Slade. My view on this is that this is probably more about the challenge of the need for lead members as opposed to the subject that they're driving. We have had involvement from lead members in some of the papers. Notwithstanding that, it may be that some of them have not been engaged in the way that you may feel necessary. And so I would not, as a point of principle, disagree that maybe that we should have more visibility of the work that lead members are doing. So what I would propose, and I hope this would be acceptable, is that you do actually fill in the requisite forms to state why and the reasons why you want to bring an item for scrutiny. And this is the agreed procedure now. And if you do that and present it to this committee, this board, we can then consider it as a board, and we will have some rationale in front of us at that time to make a decision on. So rather than sort of say, you know, let's just park it or whatever, if we put an action there, then we can consider it in a way. I do feel, you know, this is an important point, but I do feel, you know, I'm sort of a little bit hijacked here in a way because I haven't had a chance to really think about this, and it is an important issue. But if you do what I suggest, or if we agree that you do that, then we can staff it, we can bring it forward in a normal way, and that would be up to the board then to agree or disagree with your suggestion. Councillor Howell.
Yes, thank you. I actually agree with Councillor Slade. I think her proposal would be a more sensible one. I mean, I think the you only need the kind of review I was suggesting if you aren't getting an ongoing understanding and contact with the lead members through the year. And I actually would prefer that they were expected to attend items in relation to which they had put input, so we can that would be the best way forward in terms of this committee operating. You know, my particular concern is with pool regeneration, because we've had a long-standing item on the forward plan which has never found a date about pool regeneration. We were told by the portfolio holder that essentially nothing very much was going on until the URC was incorporated and up and running, and then we have foisted upon us a decision which the committee later on today will be considering about the acquisition of Carter's Quay. You know, that's from a developer that has owned site for a long time, has been touting, trying to sell it for a long time. You know, it's not something that, you know, came across the council's doorstep last week. It must have been being considered for quite a long time, but we have no visibility of that. And you know, it's really important that the regeneration pool is carried out in a considered way that involves local stakeholders, and it's not done in a piecemeal way. And at the moment, it certainly is the way it's being presented to us. It is being done in a piecemeal way, and we're not being advised sufficiently in advance as to what the strategy is. So yeah, I mean, that is my major concern. So
okay, I mean, you've made a lot of points there, but what I would say is that you know, if you're not getting the information that you need, you're not getting from the portfolio holder, yet alone the lead member. Also, Councillor Slade's solution is one of protocol. And I think we all would probably agree that if a paper on regeneration and a lead member has been associated with it, that you would expect the lead member and the portfolio holder to be there when it's being debated by ONS. As a matter of course, you wouldn't think you would have to legislate for that. But if you feel that you do need to legislate for that, we need a process to make sure that that happens. If you do want to do that, it means an audit and governance analysis of the Constitution, because it would have to be in the Constitution. I don't think we're there at that point. I mean, we could agree to just say informally that the protocol will be, but there's nothing, you know, there's nothing that's going to.
Can we just ask, Chair? Could we just ask the legal officers, as monitoring officers we have here? I very much doubt that we need to look at the Constitution to invite the lead members to talk to the committee in conjunction with the portfolio holders.
I agree with that in a way, because one wouldn't expect us to have to invite people that you would normally expect to want to come anyway if a major paper is being presented. But you obviously feel that there's a gap there. So, Monitoring Officer, could I ask for your comment, please? Thank you.
Certainly, Chairman, thank you. So Cabinet Assistants, which is the sort of official phrase for lead members, as we call them here, they don't have a specific status within either the Constitution or the legislation, because there's no provision in law for them, but they have become quite common in many councils across the country. So they are not the people really accountable to overview and scrutiny, if you look at it in purely governance terms, because they are there to advise and assist Cabinet, and then Cabinet is accountable. That's not to say that scrutiny can't request any councillor, for example, to come to scrutiny, but I'm struggling to find a way in governance terms for how a Cabinet assistant would be accountable to scrutiny for decisions, because they're not decision makers. They can assist if the portfolio holder wants to bring them along in adding to the debate, but I'm just thinking in purely governance terms, I can't see how that would be something you could require.
Well, I wasn't saying that we...
Through the Chair, please, Councillor.
Yeah, Chair, I wasn't saying that we require them. I say we request them, and it's not necessarily a scrutiny role, it's an information gathering role, because we need to understand, you know, for example, the regeneration role, presumably one of the functions of lead members is to take some of the weight off of the portfolio holder and to get into a bit more of the detail in places that the portfolio holder is not into. And we have had quite a few examples in this committee where the portfolio holder hasn't had the level of detail knowledge, and then we hit a brick wall because we can't at that moment in time investigate any further, because he has to defer to others. And it's just, in terms of information, it would be helpful. I don't want to make too much of this, but I just think it is sensible, and I think, given the nature of the roles, one should expect those people to be attending the scrutiny meetings anyway, because if it's related to their roles.
Okay, I'll come to Councillor Dion just to respond to that. I think the answer is probably in our own hand here. When we're aware that the paper is on the floor plan, we want to, then it's up to us to make sure that we invite the people that we want to attend, and we'll pay a bit more attention to that in the future to make sure that where league members are involved, that we will make sure that they are invited to the meetings, and I hope that will go some way to helping. But I do accept your point. Carter's Key is a good example, which most members had very little knowledge of, and it's come at very short notice. It's actually been in work for a long time, but that's probably because of the confidential nature of what's been happening. So it has come at a fairly short shrift, and we're having to consider it at fairly short notice. And I would say that the plan has been taken, Cabinet forward plan has taken some time to mature. It's been almost month on month, but recently it has extended out, and now the programme is taking us forward until the new year, when it's a lot better. It certainly has improved, and we've got a lot better idea of what's coming forward. I'm not guaranteeing there won't be any more surprises, but there could be. So, yeah, I think that will help. The fact that the forward plan is going out further, it's more detailed, until we make sure that we invite the people that we know will be involved in those papers. That will help. Councillor Dion.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest, I have an email thing on my computer, and when I have a specific question, I email the specific person with a specific question, and 9 times out of 10, I get the same day answer. And I would suggest, if you have specific questions for lead members, use your email. Thanks.
Okay, I think probably we've oh, sorry, Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it might be my confusion, but my original understanding of the lead member's role is to support the portfolio holder due to the extent of works to be carried out. My feeling on that is the accountability should be and remain with the portfolio holder. If the portfolio holder attends these meetings and is found wanting in the answers, then that portfolio holder should be sent back to get the answers and reappear at the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's understood. I think it's probably true to say that this is about communications or the lack of it, and that's what the concern is for Councillor Howe, and it probably feels that lead members should be more engaged in consulting with people that will be affected by the papers that are coming forward at an earlier stage. Would I be right?
Yes, I think it's just as a matter of courtesy to this committee and one out of expectation of the function of the role that a lead member should be at least listening into our committee if we're considering an item that is relevant to their area, and therefore it shouldn't be a great skin off their back really to be able to answer your questions. But I would say the most important thing that I want to say, if we are going to, as it seems, you know, just let this lie and perhaps issue requests occasionally to invite lead members to at least attend, that we do get back on the schedule an item about pool regeneration with a date, because the last one the portfolio holder did go away with various requests from the committee, for example, to consider cross-party representation on the board of the ORC and various other matters that he wasn't then able to answer, and therefore, you know, according to Councillor O'Neill, he can come back again, and he should be coming back at a set date to answer those questions, because they're very things that we are very concerned about and will lead to, hopefully, you know, better governance of, or at least give us an assurance of governance of how the regeneration process is going. So can we set a date for that pool regeneration item that is currently sitting there in the background?
Before I come back to you on that, Councillor Fear.
Thank you, Chair. I don't want to go around the houses on this, but I think the monitoring officer set out the process for this and the position of the lead members who are doing brilliant work. I think we should be following on the monitoring officer's advice. If there is a scope for the committee to go forward, then obviously there's the scope of audit and governance to come involved. But I think we should take heedness from and advice from our monitoring officer. So I think that's the process we have, and that's the process that seems to be working. Thank you.
Councillor Fear. Councillor Slade.
Thank you. I'm completely comfortable with that. At the end of the day, we should be asking the people we want to come. If they don't attend, then we can mark the fact that they were asked and they didn't attend, and then we can ask them why they don't feel they need to be there. That's something we can do. But historically, under the former council that I was a member of, we did have an annual written report from member champions and people like that came to council, that were presented to council, that we would have for information. It may well be that, you know, I know we have a number of champion roles that have been appointed by the leader of the council. Certainly that's another thing which it would be nice to see those come forward, and the lead members may wish to present an annual report just to show what wonderful work they are doing, because sometimes it will have been lost within the umbrella of the portfolio holder, and it would be nice to know what they've been responsible for doing if they have been doing great work. As I say, homelessness council has done a brilliant job, and it would be great to recognise that. Thanks.
Thank you. I think that was the item that you were referring to, Councillor Howe, as maintenance of key destination locations across BCP and Poole Quay. That's the one we have on there at the moment. No,
it's not. That is a separate one specific to the quay, which I understand there's been a delay because the officer has been ill or away for some reason. I
think we have a fairly major regeneration paper coming up.
Your approach to regeneration.
Yeah, new approach to regeneration at our next meeting on the 20th of September. I think that is the date probably that you're looking for.
might it be appropriate to, as that is our very next meeting, to actually for Councillor Howell to present some specific questions he has to that paper, and if that paper doesn't satisfy what he's looking for under the terms of the progress of regeneration in Poole, then we could actually look at a separate non-cabinet paper related item afterwards. It seems a bit silly debating it when we're about to take a paper, and if we make sure the portfolio holder is aware that there is a particular interest in the sluggish progress and the piecemeal progress in Poole, we could ask that when that paper's written it makes specific reference to some of those points. That might be possible for Councillor Howell to write some of those down to give notice. That might be helpful.
Yeah,
Councillor Howell.
Thank you. As we have the leader on, perhaps he might be able to clarify whether that new approach to generation item will be drilling down into specific areas. That might, if that item is supposed to set out, how we will approach regeneration Poole Town Centre, that's fine and very welcome that it should happen so early. But if it's a more general paper about,
I think I can ask the leader if it will specifically include all areas of BCP, and if he can answer that, yes. But I don't want to protract this debate for much longer, and I think the way forward is probably, as Councillor Slade has just suggested, I will take an action to write to the leader regarding potential for an annual report, if he thinks that's necessary, but it'll only be a request, and see what views he has on that. But we'll take that outside of the meeting. I'll take an action to write to him on that. Leader, are you there? Councillor Miller?
Sorry, apologies, Chair. I was just making myself a cup of tea.
Sorry, we're discussing the paper that's coming up on the 20th of September for regeneration.
It does talk.
Does that cover all areas of BCP?
Well, it does, in the fact that it's covering our response to regeneration. The fact, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Really, the fact that you get a major paper this evening about the largest bit of regeneration in Poole that we've certainly seen since I've been a councillor, and certainly more than councillor who's bringing this up ever delivered in Poole, is the time to talking about not having enough Poole regeneration progress. We've got a massive paper. I had a breakfast meeting this morning, managing director of the Regeneration Company, talking at length about adding further, Poole schemes alongside the lead member for Poole regeneration. So there's a significant amount of work going. Started to be a record of delivery. Had a conversation this evening. So I don't really know what else you want me to add, Chair. Okay, but I would enjoy my tea. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Councillor, I'd like to stop the debate now, if that's okay. Thank you. It's not on the agenda. All of this. This is so. If you wouldn't mind, I mean, we've got a few actions that are coming out of there, and I think the point you made has been heard quite loudly. So let's hope we get more engagement from the lead members and some of these things. Okay. Any more comments on the one I wanted to mention? And Councillor Rigby, I know you're hovering there to chastise me for not seeing an item regarding feed-offs into the sea and into Poole Bay, which we have spoken about, but failed miserably to actually put it on the plan when we amended it last week. We will put it on there, but what I will be asking you to do is fill in the appropriate forms that would give some kind of scope to the amount of work, specifically the areas that you want to look at. And so if you could bring that then back to our next meeting, and probably, I don't know, we're probably looking at maybe in the new year, possibly, given the agenda that we have. It's unlikely that we're going to be able to fit it before then. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, then we can make sure it's on there. But as I said to you privately, in principle, we have no problem with looking at that. Thank you. Members, it's okay. Shall we move on? All right, nothing else. Thank you. Okay, this brings us to the main agenda item for today, which is the transformation, the scrutiny of BCP transformation. Well, this really is a very important subject for the whole of BCP Council, to all of our residents, and in a way, the transformation is really why we now exist as BCP Council. The idea to bring 3 former local authorities together to bring a customer-focused and more efficient and more effective council. I can't stress the enormity of the task that's involved, and of course the complexity has not been helped by COVID-19 pandemic, of course, coming along to spoil all the really good plans that were put in train. But notwithstanding that, I think a lot of progress is being made, and I think what we're trying to do today, in a different sort of way, is leave it open for members to question members of the team to see, how far along that journey towards transformation we are. Is it actually going to achieve the goals that we need, particularly in financial terms, and the effect of the FP, sorry, I always get that the wrong way around, the medium-term financial plan, what are the implications for our staff, our workforce, and all the places that they're going to be working. It's an enormous undertaking, and so I think today is really a bit of information gathering and giving an opportunity to officers to tell us where they are in that process. Now, what I would like to do initially is to call on Julian Osgothorpe, who's the Corporate Director for Transformation and Resources, to give sort of an introductory brief, if you can. I'll then call upon Graham Farran, the Chief Executive, if he wishes to add anything that Julian said, and then I'll come to the leader of the council, Drew Mellor, just for a brief comment on it before we get into the debate. Now, there are a lot of the transformation team are with us today. So before we get into the debate, I think, whilst I don't normally do this, just to make sure that the team members are there and we recognise their faces, I'd just like to very quickly just run through the officers just to introduce them. So, but I will start with Councillor Drew Mellor, who we all know well. So hi Drew. I don't think you need any further introduction actually. And Chief Executive Graham Farran, again, I think needs no real introduction. Julian Osgothorpe, we haven't seen too much of you over the last few months because you've been working from home a lot. But would you just like to, introduce yourself and say hello to everybody?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members and members of the public. My name is Julian Osgothorpe. I'm the Corporate Director for Transformation and Resources. And I will leave it at that while we go around the rest of the team.
Yeah, thank you, Julian. Maria Bolton. Maria, are you there?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Maria Bolton, Head of Change and Programme Management, and working to Julian with the rest of the team on transformation.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Lucy Eldred, Head of HR and OD for BCP Council.
Thank you, Lucy. Adam Richins.
Adam Richins, Chief Financial Officer, BCP Council.
Thank you, Adam. John Hartley from Unison, I believe.
Hi, it's John Hartley here from Unison Branch Secretary.
Thank you, John, and welcome. Andy Jeeves, I believe you're from the GMB. I'm not quite sure if that's right. Are you there, Andy? No. Is he there? Okay, we'll try and contact you, Andy, to see if you've got any problems with your communications. Ruth Morgan from KPMG.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, Ruth Morgan from KPMG. I lead our local government practice at KPMG, and for BCP Council, I'm your Strategic Implementation Partner, Programme Director.
Thank you very much, Ruth. And Cheryl Bennett.
Chair, Ruth is representing both KPMG and Agilicis this afternoon.
Okay.
And could I also say we've got Matty Roudsep on the call as well. And Matty, if you wanted to introduce yourself.
Yeah, Matthew, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Matthew Roudsep, Director of Customer and Business Delivery, and for the purposes of this, I'm Senior Lead for the Estates and Accommodation Project.
Thank you. Okay, so that's all the introductions. Now, I had intended that we deal with the debate in 3 different sections, and I think we were looking at basically the organisation and then the people issues and then the accommodation issues in very broad terms. It may not be that we can stick to that, and I suspect that one will lead into the other. So I don't want to hinder the debate in any way by being too rigid with it. But you know, those are the 3 main elements I think that we need to look at. There are a couple of councillors that are online that have asked to speak, and I have incidentally asked all councillors if they'd like to submit questions. We haven't had too many, I have to say. It was a bit disappointing. But Councillor Mike Cox and Councillor Andy Hadley are there online and would like to speak, and I will bring it in at the appropriate time. I would normally wait to the end of the debate and then invite other members to speak then, but because we may get into financial areas, for example, I know that Councillor Cox is interested in, he may want to jump in at the appropriate time. So if I miss you, perhaps Jo Holly Hope will give me a kick under the table and I'll invite you in. If you are online and you want to speak, if you put your hand up on the Teams thing, and then Councillor Slade will give me a kick from the other side of the table. So I think that's probably where I want to stress just what a difficult project this is, what an enormous programme of work it is. It's got huge importance, and I think we obviously wish the team well with it, but it'll be very interesting to see where we are with it. So with that, I'd like to invite Julian Osgothorpe to come in and give us a quick brief introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, but I am going to cede the floor. We agreed a hierarchy before the meeting. It would be Councillor Mellor, Graham Farrington, then me.
If I may, Chair, it's at your discretion, Chairman, to decide the order of the meeting. So with respect to everyone, it is the Chair's discretion. Thank you.
So I was aware that I would be asking the leader of the council to speak, as I said just now. But you know what we're here. It's not necessarily the policy here. You know, we want to know about the nuts and bolts of the programme and the detailed information, and that's why I've asked you to just speak initially. But of course, Councillor Mellor will ask him to speak, as I said just now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members and members of the public. I'm gratified and really pleased that you've, as Chair, recognised the scale and complexity of what we're trying to do. As a way into this, I would like to ask Ruth Morgan from KPMG if she could perhaps play a short video that KPMG and Agilicis prepared for us as part of their presentation to us, but prior to the award of the contract to them as our strategic implementation partner. So Ruth, if I could hand over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Julian. I need to be given permission to be able to share on this meeting because I'm joining from an outside email address. If someone can give me that permission, then I'll play the video.
Well, while that's happening, if I give a brief overview then of the programme. So I understand that you've all been asked to refer to the sections of the intranet which relate to the transformation programme for BCP Council. And on that section, you will have seen that we use a motif called our new normal, the circle with the 3 different aspects to it. Each of those 3 aspects is an absolutely critical and integral part of the wider transformation programme for the council. And as Councillor Bartlett has already outlined, Those three areas are the organisational design, the implementation of the operating model that was approved through Cabinet in November 2019, and it is that aspect of the programme which KPMG and Agilicis are working with us on. The second aspect is supporting our colleagues, which is principally at this stage focused on the pay and reward programme. And that programme is intended to ensure that all employees of BCP Council are harmonised in terms of their pay and grades and conditions and so on, in order to not just remove the equal pay risk that we as a council inherited on the 1st of April 2019, but to also ensure equity and fairness across all colleagues who work for the council. The third area is our estates and accommodation rationalisation, which was set in train through the LGR process, the local government reorganisation process, and which was also set out in a report to Cabinet in February 2020. Sorry, I omitted to say that the Cabinet report that supported and kicked off the pay and reward programme was September 2019. Each of those three elements are intended to create a fundamental plank, if you like, for the council, and the other two cannot function without all three being delivered. So the final point I make before hopefully Ruth's been granted presentation privileges is that while there is a single officer governance forum for that, which is the Transformation Board, each of those three elements is treated separately in terms of the Cabinet and Council decision-making cycles, which you'll see from the fact that each of the three have had their own Cabinet cycles and Council cycles in order to approve their implementation and the funding for those programmes. But there is a single officer board, as I say, which oversees then the implementation of the three and makes sure that the integrity of the programme as a whole, any dependencies, any resourcing constraints are properly managed from an organisational perspective. Ruth, are you able to present yet?
Yeah, no problem.
Apologies, I think we're missing the sound.
I'll try again.
Transformation at Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole Council provides a once-in-a-generation opportunity to put your citizens at the centre of everything you do. KPMG is deeply invested in making BCP Council a global benchmark for local authority digital service delivery. Let's bring this vision to life. Imagine a world where residents could access information, resources and support through their local council the moment they need it, and in a way that fits seamlessly into their lives. We've imagined what this experience could look like for some of your residents.
Hi, my name is Ali, and I've lived in Christchurch all my life with my parents. I've recently bought my first house in Bournemouth, and I've never had to pay council tax before. I have seen on social media that the council website contains information on house moves, so I log on to find out more. One of the suggested options is a moving house button, which I click on to find out how to update my council tax details. I confirm my identity and follow a simple process to change my address. There's a helpful progress tracker to guide me through the steps, and I automatically get the single person discount. I feel totally comfortable making this change, is so quick, easy and secure. I can set up a direct debit and make my first payment on my mobile. This is great as I don't have to fiddle around with old documents or cumbersome payments. There's even a handy checklist of all the other services I might need. I'm going to sign up for the garden waste service. The council automatically cross-reference my move-in date with the road maintenance schedule, and I get a notification letting me know that a pothole is being repaired close to my house on the move day. It also includes suggestions on alternative routes that I can easily forward on to the removal company, and a choice to keep receiving updates on roadworks that are relevant to me.
Hi, my name is Danny and I work for the council in the early intervention team. I'm passionate about making sure citizens can be as independent as they can be while accessing the support screen. A message pops up alerting me that a household with an elderly couple may potentially need support. I can see that they've missed the refuse collection several times in the last month, and the husband has recently been to hospital for treatment after an accident. So a text message is automatically sent to the couple and it asks them if they need support.
Hi, my name is Serena. My husband Connor is experiencing a loss of mobility following an accident. It's becoming harder and harder for us to manage routine household tasks. So I text the council asking if we'd like support. Of course I say, yes, this is great, as I didn't really know where to go for help. Danny from the council gives me a call soon after. He's really helpful and talks me through different support options. Danny tells us that there are people who live on our street who would be happy to help us with the shopping and garbage disposal. He connects us to them. He will be our ongoing council contact and we book a follow-up call in a few weeks. The council sends over a virtual assistant device and one of the volunteers helps set this up. The virtual assistant has helped so much. It notifies us of appointments, it helps me keep in touch with family, and it reminds me to put the bins out. I'm so pleased I agreed to the initial call with the council. It's nice that we can maintain our independence, but we have the right support when we need it. I feel more in control and life is easier now.
There's a great range of tools so that I can easily access all the support options available, and this makes it really easy for me to provide the best experience. I've had thorough training, so I feel confident in navigating the tools and finding the best support options for citizens. It also helps me feel really engaged and like I'm making a difference in the community.
Thank you for listening.
Picture of the kind of council, the kind of capability that we're looking to build through the transformation programme. The one thing I would say is that many of those outcomes we've come to expect as private citizens in our interactions with many organisations that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And while many of those outcomes are capable of being delivered by us as a council at the moment, they take an enormous amount of human activity by staff and colleagues in order to join up all of the dots that you see happening behind the scenes in that video. And the point of the transformation programme is to make it seamless, to make it efficient, to make it effective. And yes, in due course, over the course of the programme, address the challenges that we know we have that are expressed in the medium-term financial plan by reducing the cost of the organisation that is capable of delivering those outcomes. And I think at that point I'll stop and open it up to comments and questions.
Before we go into questions, I'd just like to bring in Chief Executive. And would you like to add anything to that, please?
Thank you. If I may, it's sort of the wider perspective, I think, if that's helpful. So, local government reorganisation in Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole is probably the most complex piece of local government reorganisation that's happened in the country in the last 30 or 40 years. I'll say that unreservedly because no other council has had to merge 3 sets of social care, 3 sets of children's services. Every other reorganisation has either taken a single county and split it in half, so they just transfer those functions, or they've taken a county and just sucked the district functions up. We've taken 3 county level services in Poole, in Bournemouth and in Dorset and merged them. So there is not a single service that we have that can remain the same as it was. So through local government reorganisation, we have to redo every one of our services anyway. We've either got 3 sets of services and terms and conditions, or possibly in some cases 4, because we had Christchurch Council and Dorset Council and Bournemouth and Unitary. So it's a complex set of sort of fundamental building blocks. And I have to say, I think that some of the systems that we've been using in the preceding councils were not as modern as some of the systems in other councils elsewhere in the country. So I think there was some catching up to do and a huge local government reorganisation task. Transformation of our services is the only way to come out of this, because every system has to be rebuilt, every process has to be rewritten, and we need to do that in the most modern way. Other council chief executives that have been through LGR have said it's not till about year 10 that it really feels like a single council. It's not till after the second election that councillors really feel like they begin to own the council anyway. We've set a task of doing this in the next over the 4 to 5 year period. So we are trying to accelerate it. We're doing it on a larger scale. So it is a big programme and there are lots of challenges. If you remember, in terms of ways of working, the Shadow Authority, those councillors that were on that, in February 19, we published a 730-page agenda. We printed over 200 copies of it and we posted it out to people. The postage alone was over £7. The printing at a penny a page would have been £7 each. So we probably spent nearly £3,000 on that one meeting administering just the paperwork. We don't do that now. We've transformed the way we work. That's just a sign of the type of thing that we're trying to do. But it is a good example because other councils are already working on modern gov or similar systems, and the preceding councils weren't. So there has been a lot to do. I just want to re-emphasise the point on things like terms and conditions, because I'm sure, like me, you would believe that, I don't know, a trading standards officer is paid what a trading standards officer is paid, and the terms and conditions for a trading standards officer are constant. And the answer is absolutely they are not. So that the grading is slightly different between the preceding councils, the T's and C's are slightly different, even things like payments for call-out cover are slightly different, let alone things like overtime arrangements. So for every profession, we have to merge those. So it is a big job to do and a very big programme of work. That's why we've brought in the strategic implementation partner to make sure we get to the most modern systems as quickly as we can. But I just don't think that we should underestimate the scale and size of the task that we have ahead of us. In the private sector, if you were doing this sort of merger, you would have built in capital provision to fund the systems, or you would have built in the transformation costs into your business plans, which would have been put together during the due diligence. We, of course, are doing it within the existing resource base because there's no extra money, no extra capital allocation. We have to do it from within the resources of the council, either from council tax, business rates, or from capital. So the task is constrained in terms of financial availability, but it is huge. And I think we've set a really aspirational agenda to become the most modern council in terms of use of data, building our services on data and intelligence, and having the most modern systems. So that's what we're trying to do, get the highest levels of efficiency and utilisation, and then ensure that we have some really high quality service provision. That's what we're trying to do through the transformation programme. I just say don't underestimate the scale of that task.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Could I bring in Leader of the Council, Councillor Drew Mellon now, please? And I'm not ignoring you, Drew. I just wanted the officers to set the scene for the programme. Can you come in now? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I will. On that, I think that's quite a remarkable thing you've just asked to happen effectively. We had half an hour of discussion on not seeing enough of members and lead member involvement not being enough, and now you're putting the politicians, and just want to remind you and remind everybody that this is politicians that are leading this authority. So the fact that for scrutiny you've just asked the officers to present rather than the politicians, I think it's quite a worrying thing to do. So I do resent that and challenge that, Chair. And I don't think it's very healthy. If you'd like me to go, I'm more than happy to. If you'd like to stay, I'll do that.
Leader, there was actually no intent to cause any offence here. I apologise if that's what you've taken. And you know, what we wanted to do was give the officers an opportunity to really just tell us where they are with this programme. There is no political intrigue here whatsoever, certainly from me. But I'm sorry that you do seem to have taken offence. But can we just leave it and move on with the discussion, please, Leader? Thank you.
Well, I'll have it on record then, Chair, that it's a very slippery slope you're asking, just for the politicians not to front scrutiny. Not a lot to say. Let's get on to debate. You know, welcome the fact that we are here. I guess the only thing I would say, having this already been introduced, is to say, you know, we're only 4 months into this project, but we can't forget that although months into our specific, you know, partnership with the SIP, that is off the back of the 4 years in preceding authorities. So, you know, we know about shared services we've been through before, the phase and smarter structure phase in this authority. So we are doing this and having this ambition at a time when, you know, the organisation is already stretched by LGR and the pandemic. But hopefully you'll see through the video that the ambition isn't dimmed. So we're trying to become the best council, you know, most modern, efficient, excellent council in the country. That is also with a target of delivering over £40 million of return annually. So it's a massively ambitious project. And what it does say is this is the most ambitious and exciting project in local government today, and we're delighted with our SIP partners, KPMG and Agilisis, who are available to you today. And we've, as you've already seen by the introduction, we've got a wide range of officers ready to as well. So we've got the team to do it. We've got the ambition, and we're looking forward to the challenges ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. If you don't mind, I'd just like to kick off with a question to you. And that is, has the Cabinet established a transformation working group to have oversight of the whole programme, and how are you communicating that progress to the Council?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I mean, today's a really good part of that. The first phase of project with this SIP partner was to effectively deliver some studies and some work in terms of what the transformation, you know, project is. We're able to start playing that back to the council, and are ready to up that engagement with the membership. This is going to be all members have an opportunity to get in and be involved in this project. This is going to be something that affects every part of the council. And to our next work programmes, every bit of work is being called off in a work programme. As we move into our next work programmes, that's when we're going to start to see the real changes in the council, and we'll have an opportunity for wider member engagement.
Okay, Leader, but is there a transformation working group within the Cabinet at the moment?
No, not as such. We've got a wider governance framework in the council through the transformation project, where we're working with internally officers and our SIP partners, and that governance framework will change and evolve as we go through to moving forward on the more delivery aspects of it. We're only 4 months into this project. The first 2 work streams have been completed, which actually sets out what the next 4 years look like, and at that point we will be firming up the governance of the project.
Thank you, Leader. Okay, some members. Councillor Slade.
Can I just get some clarification here? We're maybe 4 months in since the appointment of the SIP, but we're not 4 months into the process. The transformation programme started with the Shadow Council. It was the first thing that we started doing in 2019. We made a commitment to a cross-party transformation working group. Can I ask whether there is an intention for cross-party involvement in a proper working group, something which is interactive and inclusive rather than briefings, or whether that is currently not the intention, and when we might expect that to come forward? And then I know that Councillor Earl is going to lead for us on some questions around the systems, so I'll then defer over to her. Thanks.
So was that question to the Leader?
That's a question presumably to the Leader, because I think the Leader wants to lead this.
Okay. Leader, would you like to respond to that, please?
Sorry, was muted. Absolutely happy to. Yeah, absolutely no change in intention. We'll be bringing forward a working party that enables us to deliver this on a cross-party basis. That said, this is very much work that is happening on an ongoing basis through the administration. So a mix of being led by us, but with a opportunity for a working party to help shape and add in as we move forward. But sorry, and also in terms of the point around the 4 months, absolutely. But what we've done in terms of the period was largely in terms of the procurement phase, how we were procuring our transformation partner as well. So the actual work, the work packages we're doing now only started 4 months ago. So in terms of the preceding work, I flagged it up in my introduction. Very much happened from 2015 onwards. The work we did in terms of shared services. Now that's moved in terms of our operating model, the initial piece of work KPMG did with us, and move forward now in terms of their formal engagement and the 4-month process that has started with the first 2 work packages.
Yeah, I just come back. The setting up of the organisational design was a massive piece of work, which involved many members, and KPMG were involved with. I don't think we should, because there'll be public watching this who will think that that wasn't a big piece of work. It was. The other massive piece of work that's been led by officers over a period of more than 2 years is the work that's been done on the job families, the Centre of Excellence, working with the unions. That please don't dismiss the incredible amount of work that's gone into harmonising so much already, separate from the strategic implementation partner. I just feel it's so important the public know how far we have come, because what I'm sensing is that's being minimised, and I think Julian's team and Lucy's team particularly have done incredible work up to prior to the procurement. That's not the be all and end all, and I really would like some commitment about when we might expect the governance to then include members of the current opposition, because obviously we're not much more than 18 months away from the next election. It's really, really important that as we go into that phase that all members of the council understand what's at play here, because we don't know what's going to happen in 2023, and it would be a real shame if half the council were blind to what was happening, and then there was another change of administration.
I understand. Julian Oscarthorpe, did you want to respond?
Thank you, Chair. I feel there's a need to go back to something I said at the outset, which is, while we try and hold a single officer governance structure, we have tried to keep the 3 core elements of the programme quite separate from a political and a public perspective. And it is absolutely right that we have been working on the organisational design and the operating model-led transformation elements of the programme since 2019. There is, in the October Cabinet cycle, there will be a full update of where we are, what we've done over the last 4 months. And one of the components in that paper will be a suggestion that we create the kind of working group that Councillor Slade is referring to. I would also point out, however, that in the Estates and Accommodation programme, there is a cross-party working group looking at the civic space, both here in Poole and in the BCP Civic Centre, previously known as the Bournemouth Town Hall, and the Christchurch civic officers. The one element of the programme where that, if you like, the cross-party oversight or engagement has not been present, that has been running for some time, is in the pay and reward element of the programme, and that's because we've been working very hard with the unions, Unison and GMB, over the last 18 months, making sure that they're fully engaged and aware of what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and negotiating changes such as the harmonisation of terms, conditions, and the introduction of the common role profiles. That will also be coming back through Cabinet in the foreseeable future as we look to implement the new harmonised terms, conditions and pay and grading early next year.
Okay, Councillor Slade. Okay, thank you. Yeah. I've actually got 3 hands, Tony Trent and Philo and Councillor Mike Cox. I know you're indicating, but I want to give members of the board the opportunity before I call you in. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Whilst I understand the digital, and the emphasis on that video was on the digital, and it's very handy, you can access information 24/7. We do still have a large number of our residents who either don't want to access via digital means or can't access by digital means. So I would certainly like to see that we will be keeping information available for those people to access, that they will have someone at the end of a phone, and so that they can get their, their questions answered for them. I mean, it was pointed out in the adult social care section, there was a market position statement where experience of people using adult social care in BCP, a proportion of the people who use the services who found it easy to find information was below average. Now, that's not really good, is it? Because and if they can't access digital, what hope is there to get help and support? So I hope we're not going to forget those elements of our residents who can't do that.
Mr. Osgood.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. I absolutely passionately agree with you. And if we go right back to that report in November 2019, it made a couple of really important statements on the future of the operating model and the organisational design. There is no doubt, there will never be any doubt about the need for us to not just preserve but enhance and improve all of the channels, the opportunities that our residents and the people wishing to access our services have, whether that's face-to-face or on the telephone or in the digital channels. The point I think the video and I would try very hard to make is that at the moment our digital channels are very weak. And what the effect of that is that we're forcing people who can and are willing to self-serve on a digital basis. We're forcing them to compete with those people who should be getting that valuable face-to-face or voice attention. So the emphasis on digital is to increase the viable choices, the feasible choices that our residents and customers and visitors have with us in order to protect and improve the higher value, the face-to-face and the telephone channels for those people who either can't or who are unable to access our services digitally. That is absolutely at the heart of everything we're trying to do.
Sorry, can I bring in Councillor Miller?
Yeah, can I just say yes? I mean, I understand that, yes, our website is not the best, let's say, at trying to find things on there. No, you can go round and round and still not find it, even when you're good at using websites. So I would definitely like to see an improvement in our website offer.
Absolutely, Councillor. And it's a fundamental part of the transformation programme. The difficulties or the lack of intuitive access that you're referring to is very much a product of the LGR, the local government reorganisation journey, and the bringing together of the preceding councils that Graham Farron was referring to. It is a key part of the programme going forward.
Councillor Miller?
Thanks, Chair. Can I just clarify if you're planning on going to the officers first for my hand up to answer that question? So before I add any further answer, can I just clarify your intentions for the rest of this meeting?
I think there's a degree of paranoia coming in here, Councillor Miller. I actually didn't know that you put your hand up before Mr. Osgoodthorpe. It was as simple as that. Had I seen that your hand was first, then I would have. It's difficult when you're running a hybrid meeting, as you probably know, to keep your eye on 3 different screens and take notes from people advising you at the same time. I can assure you that there is nothing underhanded going on here. Thank you, Councillor Miller. Do you want to come in now?
I just think it's an important point that politicians are supposed to be leading the scrutiny. Chair, I very much agree with the answer Julian Osborne's given. The only thing I'd overlay is the fact that significant investment in customer services in libraries, and one of the reasons we wanted to do that is so we can bring effective services closer to people. So these libraries are in really well used transport areas, so we're able to bring services closer to people. Jackie, Councillor Edwards is absolutely right, Julian's absolutely right. By allowing more of the people who want to access these services digitally, we create the space for people who are less able or less interested in activating digitally to go and get the service they need. What we need to get to is a service where everybody can engage with the council in whatever forum that they want to, and by having a genuinely world-leading, digitally enabled council, we can do that. So we're very much at the start of a journey. I think you'll see from the video some of the aspirations where we want to get to by the end of it. A lot of the challenge we can bring now is trying to work out which parts of that we can step up further and faster. But ultimately, there's a significant amount of work that needs to go in our digital infrastructure to enable us to be a proper digital council. But I very much agree with the comments that Councillor Edwards has brought forward.
Thank you, Councillor Mellor. Yes, and when I was looking at the new operating model, I'm delighted to say that the provision for the telephone lines is well and truly entrenched in there. So it certainly is there, and I think the new model of working does include it. Before I come to Councillor Allison and Councillor Earl, there are a number of people that have put their hands up. I just want to bring them in online because they've been waiting for quite some time. I don't want to upset them. So, first of all, Councillor Trent.
Thank you, Chair. My question is actually very similar to Councillor Edwards' question, and I'll preface it by saying that I have had lots of calls and regular calls about people who've tried to contact the council about something, usually by phone, and aren't getting anywhere. They're being put in queues or there's no response. So the situation with non-digital communications is actually quite bad at the moment. But the question I was going to ask is, what measures are built into the delivery model to ensure that the 1/3 estimate of the population that are not connected do not slip through the net? And is there any member taking the lead monitoring this aspect? Thank you. I hope you heard all of that anyway, because it went a bit echoey.
Yes, yeah, I heard. I mean, specifically, Councillor Trent, your question was aimed at members monitoring it, so I'm going to put this question to the leader. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's again a very valid question, isn't it? I thought there were two parts to it. Actually, what we're trying to do, it's not ideal at the moment in terms of the level of customer service being given. Partly that's been an issue that is slightly improving, but has come from immediately having to enable people to work from home. So a lot of those customer services teams and people in the different departments were working from home, and that has caused an issue through the pandemic. Partly it's to do with the LGR piece of our website and all three different websites coming together, and partly it's to do with the computer. So there's some parts of those things we can improve quickly, some are going to take longer. Councillor Trent's absolutely right that the current level of response doing this journey, so we're not trying to do it just to save money, we're trying to do it to bring a better service. So the ambition is to do more with less, and I think we can do that. On a specific point around member engagement and who's responsible for that, we've had a significant discussion today about lead member involvement. So we've got a lead member for engagement in Councillor Kelly, and she's Councillor Jane Kelly, and she's deeply embedded in the work in this transformation programme, and also also, you know, the website projects and the customer service projects as well. So yes, ultimately responsibility is with me as a transformation lead, and supported massively by Jane Kelly as we try and improve the service, you know, do more with less. Thank you.
Very much. Councillor Mike Cox, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My goodness, we are a bit sensitive, aren't we, Leader? I just wanted to make a point that, as far as I'm concerned, overview and scrutiny is a fact-finding mission, and politicians don't tend to be very good at providing facts, and so I actually think that getting officers to provide answers is a very good thing. I have to comment that the KPMG report I found singularly unhelpful, because it was clearly a PR exercise. And I have to say, in terms of the representation of the people on there as being representative of the users of the services which we're supposed to be offering, I find them singularly unrepresentative. However, the question I particularly have is just it was actually relating to how's it going, you know, and you've heard actually various comments from the chief executive, who I think commented which is the most difficult transformation in the country, with lots of challenges, and even the leader, and then the leader of course turns around and says it's massively ambitious. Well, yeah, I suppose you can have both, but that, reading between the lines, that seems to me to imply that all's not well in the state of Denmark, and that actually we've programmed in, we've assumed massive savings, massive transformational savings, and these are in the budget which the leader put forward, and I want to know how it's going. Can we rely on these actually happening? And you know, we quite often we get it's a blue, green, amber, red, white to show us how different aspects are going. I'd like to know, you know, what, and I'd like to know this from Adam, if possible, rather than the leader. I'm very happy to have your assessment as well, leader. But I'd certainly like Adam's comment as to how he thinks the transformation is going. You know, whether we're in the red zone, are we in the amber zone, are we in the green zone? That's my question.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Cox. I see Julian Oscarthorpe's got his hand up. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I'm more than happy for Adam to come in, but I think there's a need to respond to Councillor Cox in the context of each element of the programme. So if I take each in turn, starting with pay and reward, the programme is on budget. It was never intended to deliver savings. It's a harmonisation. It's an equity-based programme. However, it does have an accompanying assumption within the medium-term financial plan that it would be cost neutral. That, in other words, that harmonising the pay and grading would not result in a detrimental effect on the medium-term financial plan. We believe we're on target to meet that. There is no doubt, however, that the pandemic has set us back in terms of its time. So, in summary, the pay and reward programme is on budget. It is on track to deliver the outcome, the financial outcome that in accordance with the assumption in the medium-term financial plan, but we are behind schedule on it. The estates and accommodation, the first phase of that, which is the development of the BCP Civic Centre, the refurbishment of the annex and the extension and the decommissioning and repurposing of Poole Civic Centre and the Christchurch Civic offices. And I know there's been much discussion about this in the member space in recent months. We are slightly behind schedule with that. The reason for that is a combination of interruptions to the supply chain and pandemic issues. Having said that, we are probably still on schedule to decant or release the staff spaces in both Poole and Christchurch Civic offices by the end of this financial year, and we will then have to formally decommission and repurpose them. And that will release the savings, albeit around a quarter later than expected, within the medium-term financial plan. The organisational design element of the transformation programme, as the leader has said, we are in month 4 of that. I have every confidence that that programme over the next 4 years will identify and estimate the level of savings that we estimated it would in November 2019. What the pandemic has shown us is that the landscape for local authorities is different than it was in 2019, November 2019. So while the identification and estimation of the benefits will be on target, as a council, as members, as senior officers, we may have some difficult choices in order to assess how many of those identified and estimated benefits we will ultimately release, and if so, when we will release them. So on balance, my view, given the last 15 months, that the programme is performing both financially and in terms of its timeline and in terms of the anticipated benefits as we would expect it to perform.
Thank you very much. Mr. Richards, before you come in, I note that on the council website we've got a Smarter Structures hopefully producing a £15 million savings coming from the transformation programme in 2021-22. So I guess my question relates to the same thing. How goes it? Is it on track? Are we going to be able to produce those sorts of savings? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So with regards to the transformation programme, can I just take the opportunity to highlight what has been assumed within the council's budget for 21-22 and the medium-term financial plan? Within 21-22, we have assumed £7.5 million worth of transfer. In the following year, 22-23, we then step that up to £25 million of annual savings, an increase of £17.5 million. And then in 23-24, we step it up to £42.4 million, an increase of £17.4 million. So that is currently what is set out and underpins the council's budget for this year, medium-term financial plan. Clearly, the assumptions with regards to 22-23 onwards will be something for council to consider and hard code in its budget for 22-23 when it sets its budget for that year in February of next year, but that isn't a planning assumption. So with regards to the £7.5 million, you've heard from June that we are slightly behind schedule, but we have confidence that actually in total those savings are achievable. The is that we've captured £2.5 of those savings, but that is only part one of the 3-part programme. So that was a lot of individual savings that's like through the adult social care front door and in various staff savings. What we've got to come is the savings from Smarter Structures and the early work around third-party spend and commissioning. So that is a work that's ongoing. With regards to the in-year position and the impact in 21-22, clearly that will be a matter that is set out as part of the quarterly budget monitoring report, with the first quarter's budget monitoring report due at Cabinet at the end of September, and before that, subject to scrutiny by this board. What we're expecting second quarter, I think Julian referred to it earlier before, a report to this to Cabinet leading into that, a more detailed analysis to what we will achieve through the Smarter Structures programme and what we will achieve through that for the year that contributes towards that overall £7.5 million. So in summary, we've got target 7.5, £2.41 million, and there is ongoing work programme around smarter structures and the third party spend that hopefully should contribute a significant amount towards that overall total.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. Leader, could I come to you and just ask if your comments on that? But in answering, could I just put this extra question to you? The overall transformation programme was scheduled to be somewhere between 4 and 5 years. So, given where we are today, are we still sort of on track for those kind of timelines, as well as the financial benefits that we hope to realise?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll start with the last question. Absolutely. So both in terms of the timelines and the quantum, we're very confident that those savings are there, and we're very confident in how well the programme started, and now is actually mapping out in more detail the time frame that we will be able to deliver in that. What we're trying to do is to deliver more quicker. So we're trying to front load more, not on the savings, but in terms of the workload we're doing. Part of the reasons for that, Chair, is what we're trying to do is to get more of a knowledge transfer into the council and the council staff. So we've asked our SIP partners to effectively, try and front load more into the first 2 years of the programme, so that then we're able to deliver more organisationally going forward as well, which I think is a really important thing as it puts us on a sustainable footing going forward, and to make the most out of the opportunity working with these partners. Just a couple of things I'll add in terms of a wider question. I think, how's it going? Effectively, what was asked, we've had a highly commended procurement exercise. Everybody who was a part of it has said it's one of the best public sector procurement processes that they're a part of, which is great, and we've ended up with an excellent SIP partner. We've had the first 4 months of the work with that partner has been fantastic. We're working well and working at pace with some challenges we can bring forward, but it's working well, and we're seeing quite a lot of, particularly around the architecture, a hugely complicated system we've got and systems, and how we've actually now managed to slim that down in terms of having a really clear understanding of what systems we're going to turn off and what systems we can do more of. In terms of the savings specifically, I guess a few sort of comments there really. So absolutely fully committed to the ability to save those sums. The overall target, we're talking about that target of 42.4 million has effectively been agreed by the entire council, because it was a UA target, and we haven't altered that. So we've got full council commitment to that savings target. What we have done, what we did do differently, in the MTFP we picked up when we became the administration on the 1st of October, the savings of this year were actually £15 million. And what we did was we changed that to 7.5 million, because we think that it's better to, you need to be making these savings when you've done the work effectively. So, when we've got the benefit of the digital, work in the background, when we can really transform how we're changing services. So we've actually taken £7.5 million off of what the target was for this year's delivery, and we're confident of achieving it. So hopefully that was a useful summary, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. Councillor Anne Filer, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's been a very good presentation so far, and I'm very confident in the team that the team is. I know a lot of the members of the team, and I just have utter confidence that it will be all right. But sort of expanding on what Councillor Jackie Edwards said, we have to live in the meantime with our residents, and at the moment the residents are having a tough time. And I know we've got COVID, and I know we've got people working from home, but my residents, a number of them will try phoning the council first. They don't sort of think they can bother their councillor with a missed dustbin or whatever it is. Of course, if they contact us, we know exactly who to go to get things done. But we've got my question is, what's the time scale for at least the basics to be able to be dealt with digitally? And how is this being communicated to our residents? Because I don't think residents realise what a massive programme is undergoing and why things are difficult. When you explain it to them that you're merging 3 different councils with 3 different, everything about them is so completely different, including contracts and everything else, and they sort of get it, but I don't think we're communicating that well enough. So I think my question is to the leader on that one. And how can we improve the confidence of the public in their being able to contact their council, their residents of this town, or of this area, this BCP area, are getting very frustrated. They try to call, they can't call. If they do call, no one answers. And it's not just dustbins; it's things like driving licences. And I know that Stuart does a fantastic job in the customer centre, and it's not actually, it was down to government, but people don't know that until it's explained to them. And I think that they need to know what's going on and the scale of it, the time scale and the immensity of it, because it is a very, very ambitious programme and a very difficult one to achieve. So my question is, when can we get the basic minimum working on our website, just the sort of everyday stuff that people want to do, the stuff that they should be able to do, and can we do a better job in communicating this?
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. I think a lot of us can identify with some of the issues you've raised there. If you wouldn't mind, would it be appropriate for me to call in Matty Rouselet, because he heads up the customer service centre? Is that right? Yeah. Would you mind, Matty?
No, that's fine, Chairman. Thanks very much for bringing Fowler highlights a kind of an issue we're currently facing with high levels of demand. I think Julian and the leader have already referred to some of the challenges that we're currently facing in relation to that. One of the key things, though, what we're trying to do through the transformation programme is the development of a lot of connected improvements, which together collectively will improve our customer experience. So no one thing will necessarily achieve that, but certainly there's a range of capabilities that will be introduced as part of the technology work that we'll be doing that will make the experience our customers go through that much easier than it might currently be. At the moment, I think what I would say is that our staff are still coping with the aftermath of the COVID pandemic in terms of how it affects their working practices, and we are trying to find ways to redeploy people according to the particular demands that are coming in. So, and also to change the way we might react to a particular kind of demand. So, in relation to blue badges, which Councillor Fowler referred to earlier, we've tried to slim down the process as it relates to people that are renewing their blue badge. So we're not treating everybody as a new blue badge applicant. We're recognising that those that are new applicants require a greater deal of verification than somebody that might have had a blue badge first. So by doing that, we're reducing the overall time that people might wait from 12 weeks, which is the Department of Transport outside kind of limit, to nearer to 4 weeks, 3 weeks for those particular people. So trying to treat people according to their particular circumstances and history is one way which we can deploy our resources more effectively. And that's what the transformation programme is all about at the end of the day, is to look at all these different ways in which people engage with us for all sorts of different services, and trying to make sure we make that particular journey as smooth and as effective as it possibly can be. But we're starting from a difficult starting position, as has already been referred to. So there's an awful lot of work to do. And certainly the foundations of that will be the technological changes that will make contact to the council and from us to our customers more easily in the future. But it's not something we can deliver overnight. It's going to take time to identify the sequence of those different capabilities as they're be delivered to the council, and as they're delivered, services will then be able to make use of it. So it's as we've been referred to, a fairly challenging and longer term process, but we recognise the areas that we need to improve on.
So, Leader, I think you wanted to come back on this one as well.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, look, Matty's given a response, isn't he? Just to say, absolutely understand the questions by Councillor Filer, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Trent, in terms of how we now need to put pressure on the system effectively and transformation programme to stand up some things, quicker. We've got it's all about, for me, improving the other technology, other ways of interacting with council, so that that takes a lot of the interaction is dealt with really efficiently, but it creates that space for everybody else to engage in the way they want to. The challenge is the hugely complicated digital architecture we've got sat behind that, and there's a really interesting slide we'll have and could share around effectively what the first phase of work we've been doing, looking at that architecture and which systems we want to be turning on or turning off over time, and we need to get that right before we can actually then fully embed digital solutions. What we can do and what we're putting challenge on, I had a fantastic meeting with Agilicis recently, was ways we can stand up some of those items quicker. So we've got this big ambition to be a hugely digitally enabled council. That will take time. What can we stand up in the meantime? So fully endorse the questions, and can only say they're absolutely at the front and centre of discussions in the transformation programme, and we will look to bring forward things as quickly as we can in terms of improving that. So hope that's of some help.
Thank you, Leader. Mr. Osgothorpe, did you want to come in?
Yeah, absolutely. Just to cap off some of the comments that Matty and the Leader has made, and specifically respond to Councillor Filer. The next stage of the harmonisation of the website content is due to be concluded at the end of September, and that should mean that there is only a single set of information for each service as opposed to the legacy arrangements. The second point relates to Councillor Filer's question about what's the time frame for the first phase of the improvements in the customer services arrangements. We are absolutely focused on delivering meaningful change in that space as quickly as possible. And having said that, it is a significantly complex and technically challenging process, but we're anticipating that it will be in the first 12 months. Members and residents will start seeing a real change in the way in which they can access services and the council. And just a final point, I know how difficult our residents and visitors and you as members have found the last 15 or 16 months with the telephone contact. When we went into the pandemic, our legacy telephony infrastructures, as Graham Farron referred to at the outset of this meeting, were beyond the end of life. They were on best endeavours support arrangements. And during the pandemic, we've transitioned to Anywhere 365, which is a modern hosted cloud-based service. And as a result, we have far greater data about the telephony traffic, where it's going, how it's being responded to. Some of the issues that we're now trying to get under the skin of is less about the telephony infrastructure, it's more about call centre arrangements. So Matty and Stuart Walters, as Councillor Filer referred to, are responsible for the corporate customer services, the corporate customer contact centre, but services have their own contact centres as well, and we don't necessarily have the visibility about what's happening with those. We are working on that, absolutely. You have my commitment to it. I have a meeting next week to start reviewing all of the data we have about all telephonies across the whole organisation. So we will be doing everything we can while we're improving the web and the digital front end to make sure that the telephony experience is improved as well.
Thank you. Councillor Allison, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I really want to start by saying I'm quite disappointed with how the session started this afternoon. We heard quite rightly from senior officers about how complex this transformation process is, and then we were presented with what I think was quite a condescending video that oversimplifies the transformation process. And it gives this sort of utopian view of how we want the accountants to look. But I think we can all accept as members and the experiences we've had speaking to our residents is that we're not really any much close to that utopia. than we were 15 months ago, and certainly the scripted presentations from the actors in the video we saw is absolutely nothing like the day-to-day communications we get from residents about how they feel they are dealt with when they interact with the council. And then we've had, quite an adversarial tone from the politicians, from the leadership, which is quite disappointing. Quite a lot of questions here, topics, and I think some of them are going to be more appropriately answered by the politicians, and quite a lot more will be appropriately answered by officers. And this is one of the only opportunities we've had where we've got officers on the record in a public space to ask questions about the transformation process. So I'm a lot more interested in finding out what the officers' view, and certainly what the trade union reps' views are of how the transformation process has gone, than I am in hearing what the leader has, because we've heard many times in full council and other sessions, cabinet sessions, how he feels the transformation process is going. And I also wanted to sort of challenge what he's been saying about the budget. So we all accept that the budget savings target for transformation is exactly the same as the one that was set by the UA. However, what he fails to mention every single time when he brings it up is that the process was designed to have the estates and the transformation of the digital aspects put in place before the staff was supposed to have changed, and those efficiencies were supposed to be there before the staff redundancy were made. And instead, we've got it tipped the other way around, where we're losing staff at quite a high rate to save money quite quickly, but the digital processes aren't there in place to make sure that those people have got the capability to deliver the services, and that the staff that are remaining, are have departments to manage the workload. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you've touched on a lot of things there already, but there are three main sort of work streams here. One is the reorganisation, the other is the effect on our staff and having to restructure our organisations, and then we've got the accommodation side of it. Now, my understanding is you need all three of those to be in place before the new model will actually work, and until such times we will have standard kind of line structures operating for quite some time within that. And I guess it's not until we're probably 4 or 5 years down the road where we're going to have the utopia, as you put it, that was put out in the video. I actually thought the video was quite good because it was just meant to give a sense of what we're trying to achieve and what we might be, a position we will be in hopefully a few years' time. That's all it was. That's all it was. But you want to lead, I understand, on the personnel issues. You say you've got a lot of questions, so please kick off.
Absolutely.
And if you wouldn't mind, direct your question at the person that you tell us who it is. I see your hand up. I'll come to you in a second, leader. Yeah, I want you to, if you've got a specific question for the union, for example, please say so and we'll get them to answer it. If you've got a series of questions that you want to address to the leader, please say so, just so we can get some kind of structure to the system. Okay, so leader, before you start, leader is putting his hand up violently there, so I better let him in. I don't want to be rebuked again. Leader.
Thank you very much, Chair, and I appreciate that indulgence. Chair, I'll only come back on the specific point where the Councillor Allison's entirely factually incorrect, and he's made a statement. I feel it's important I clarify. What he said is that the UA savings until the digital transformation work was done, that's absolutely completely the opposite. Actually, the UA left us with was a £15 million savings target for this year, and what we did is actually said no, that's not right. What we need to do is you need to deliver it more around the back end, effectively when that savings is, sorry, not the savings, sorry, when the work has been done. So we've halved the Unity Alliance's savings are expected to make in that first year. So it's exactly the opposite way. You come back in terms of one of the reasons why we were supported in changing the leadership of the council, and I think the term often used was a cabinet of compromise. If you've got an portfolio holder who sat on cabinet, who would have been at hand of the MTFP, completely getting the wrong end of the stick in terms of how that policy was going to be outlaid by his own cabinet, I think that says an awful lot, Chair.
Thank you, leader. Okay, Councillor Allison, do you want to your
Yeah,
specific
absolutely.
questions?
Yes, I'm happy to go into the. So, as you said, I was hoping to talk a lot about the people side of the topic today. So, in terms of the pay and reward scheme, I wanted to ask, I think maybe Julian or Graham or whoever officers feel it's more appropriate to answer. So, where are we currently on the timeline for the reward scheme? Are we confident that this financial year's targets are going to be met in terms of staff cost savings? And I also wanted to ask, in terms of, now we know that the consultation, the Smarter Structures programme has been completed, when's the proposed date going forwards for the ballot for the trade unions to accept that? Thank you.
Who's that directed at? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allison. I think there's a couple of things intertwined there that are not necessarily intertwined. So the first was the pay and reward process. The timeline for that is that we are expecting to still work towards a harmonisation implementation date of April 2022. That involves a continuing negotiation process with the unions, Unison and GMB. When I say that an implementation of a harmonisation date, that does not mean any changes necessarily to pay and grading, because that will be subject to the negotiation with the unions. So pay and reward, as I said, it is behind where we would have hoped it would be because of the pandemic, but we're still anticipating April 2022 as the implementation date or the start point for the harmonisation process, subject to negotiation with the unions and the ballot of members. The Smarter Structures initiative is separate to pay and reward. Having said that, I can understand why there is a little bit of confusion, because it did use some of the output of the pay and reward process in terms of the adoption of common role profiles and mapping to those role profiles. The Smart Structures programme, as Mr. Richards referred to, was intended to deliver savings in quarters 2 and 3, so from October this year. The consultation process, as you indicated, has closed. A number of those proposals have been changed fairly fundamentally as a result of the feedback from that consultation process and the feedback from the unions, and implementation horizons for each of those proposals is going to differ. There will be some which happen more quickly, and there will be some which we've acknowledged need more time in order to implement safely and effectively in terms of the impact on service provision. So there are some of our colleagues who are in the process of those processes right now in order to give effect to savings from quarter 2 this year. Others, it won't be impacted directly for some time to come.
Do you want to carry on?
Yeah, thank you very much. So we've heard quite a lot from directors and other senior members of staff that the trade unions have been really heavily involved in the consultation processes, and they've been very involved in transformation. I think this is the only opportunity we've had so far, certainly since I've been a councillor, where we've had trade union reps actually at any of our public meetings. So I'd be very interested to get both of the trade union reps that are on the calls take on how they feel that their input has been taken in terms of the transformation process.
Yeah, apparently Andy Jeeves is not with us and says his apologies, but John Hartley from Unison is on the line, so maybe we could ask him to respond to that. Thank you.
Hi there, sorry about my camera. I think the point I would make is we've been talking, certainly since I was first elected in March 2020, on a regular basis with our HR colleagues about the changes, and obviously there've been differences in speed to some of these things, like we've gone through Smarter Structures most recently, but we've continued talking about the terms and conditions and the pay and grading structure throughout that period of time. At the moment, we're kind of focused on any draft grading and pay structure for the organisation, and then obviously the process for that would be to receive the draft pay structure and then cost of those proposals to be known, and then discuss the implementation of that. And we're at various points in those discussions, but I think it's fair to say we've requested more information at this point and more data around the proposed options. But certainly, yeah, the smart structures proposals have obviously provided some level of detail to staff about how the organisation is going to move forward. But I think there's been a lot of disquiet amongst the staff, and that came out through the proper consultation process, and that's why some of those proposals have been paused at this stage. And obviously we're still supporting staff going through redundancy situations at the moment, so it's very much still a work in progress.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of the ballot that will go forwards, maybe could I get sort of ask both the trade union reps and Julian in terms of what kind of level of confidence they have that it'll be supported and that the overall staff will be happy with what's currently on the table.
Thank you, Mr. Osterthorpe.
For those of you who have worked with me for some time, you'll understand that I like to be candid, but responding to that question, I'm not sure is appropriate in this forum. What we are intending to enter negotiations with the unions on is the absolute best possible outcome of the very difficult proposition that we're trying to deal with, which is harmonising pay and grading and terms and conditions for more than 4,000 staff at a time when the medium-term financial plan clearly paints a difficult picture, and we can't resolve that without balancing both sides of that equation. So it's not for me to say how confident I am in the members of Unison and GMB in responding to that ballot. If John, as the Unison rep, wants to do so, he's free to do so, but I'm uncomfortable making comment on it.
Thank you, Mr. Osterthorpe. I mean, I'd just make a comment here that, and I'm not sure if it's still the case that we've got potentially between 400 and 600 redundancies overall for the transformation programme. Now, clearly, with such a large number of people involved, this is obviously going to have a lot of weight. It's going to be on a lot of people's shoulders, and indeed it has been for a number of years. When we went through shared services, we went through LGR, and now we're going through smarter structures. And there's clearly been a long period where the staff have wondered what their futures were going to be. So clearly, I mean, it's probably self-evident in the situation that there's going to be a lot of disgruntled people working out there. The question I've got is, how are we supporting those that are really concerned about their futures? How is the communication to them? And I think that's probably a question that falls not only to the unions, because they'll have a feel for it, but also for HR, who are actually leading on this. So I'd like to bring in, if you don't mind, Lucy Eldred to see if she could give us a response to those concerns. You with us? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, Chair.
Nice easy question for you, Lucy.
Well, no, I was expecting it to come my way at some point this afternoon. And I think in terms of, if I can recap the question, is what is BCP and particularly the HR function doing to support the workforce through these turbulent periods of change? Because you've outlined and summarised a number of changes that the organisation have been through over the last 2, 3, 4 years or so. And I think that there's a sequence of events that we really need to focus on in order for us to support that workforce. Because when you talk about disgruntled employees because of the changes that are coming, I think what we mustn't forget is that we have huge discrepancies and variations across the workforce at the moment, that the way we can support any change and any employee in the organisation is work as hard as we possibly can to get a decision. And that's the process that we've been working on, as John, you've heard from John at Unison, for the last 18 months, 2 years or so. Those discussions, those negotiations, the data manipulations, the investment from partners within Corn Ferry and KPMG is the work that we've been doing to get the right decision, to get the best offer, as Julian has outlined, in order to hopefully get through what is a positive ballot. And I think Julian's absolutely right not to offer a view on the confidence of members within the organisation. But that's the focus that we have been really concentrating on to get to that point in the programme, to get a decision on an offer that, you know, I will be positive about, that offer of a single set of terms and conditions for BCP Council is good, is modern, it's fit for purpose, bearing in mind we're working with multiple terms, conditions and allowances, a single grading structure with a single set of pay associated to those grading structures. We need to get to the point where this organisation has a clear direction and understanding of what that is. And that involves a lot of officer hard work, as you've heard from Councillor Slade, that has been ongoing for a number of years. Then it needs union support via a collective agreement and a ballot process. And once we've got that decision, the best thing we can do for our workforce is to communicate the outcomes of that decision and do our best to implement it in as the most appropriate and sensitive time frame as possible. So I see the priority to support the workforce is to get the work done in order to implement the solution. And I think if I can just add one other thing, because it's been very topical, particularly in response to the pandemic, is the wider views in terms of what we offer, what we call an employee value proposition, is to really understand the broader holistic offer to our employees when it comes to things like flexible working, family-friendly policies, a well-being offer as well, which we have invested in and improved significantly in response to recent events. That all gets wrapped up into what is quite a lot of information that we're going to have to work really hard to communicate across the workforce. So that's what I think the priority is in order to support the workforce, Chair.
Thank you very much, Lucy. I'd like to ask one question, another question. The pay and reward policy being worked on at the moment, there is obviously an overlap. I think Julia mentioned it earlier on with smarter structures. How much of a confusion is it for staff and considering their futures within smarter structures when they don't know what the outcome of their pay and reward policy is going to be, because there must be some real difficulties in this situation.
Yes, so I don't want to probably repeat my first answer, because I also think it's the same solution, that to get that clarity in order to communicate clearly, transparently, authentically across the workforce will mitigate any confusion, because we did use data that we've been working on for the pay and reward project to inform a short-lived project within Smarter Structures, which absolutely did create some change with how we implemented the Smarter Structures project. But it was always going to be the pay and reward project that we used to communicate clearly to all of our workforce about the outcome of a job evaluation process, the mapping to a role profile, of which we are really keen to get to that point. But we will get to that point when we have reached collective agreement with our trade unions. So yes, absolutely. We knew Smarter Structures was being done out of sequence, and I don't think anyone across the officer corps or the member corps would have planned it in that way. But there's been an awful lot that we have had to respond to over the last couple of years that hasn't been planned, and there are always consequences to some of those decisions.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rossithorpe.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add a couple of things to what Lucy has said, and I know you will treat this coming from me like this as an anecdote, but I do believe this. I do hold this as true in the face of my interactions with my colleagues across the organisation. Much of the disgruntlement comes from people because they don't believe it's fair, that they're doing the same job and often being paid less money than colleagues. And you know, the number one driver that I hear in staff meetings is when are you going to level the playing field? When will pay and reward remove that inequality? So while I absolutely acknowledge, Chair, that there is a degree of anxiety about what that future pay offer may do to people's current incomes, we have to remember that this is about harmonisation. It's about redressing imbalance, whether that's positive or negative. And it's the lack of that harmony, it's the lack of that balance, which is the most common source of disgruntlement, which is evidenced to me as I go about my business in the organisation. I would also just like to make what I hope is a final point on smart structures. That if we go back to the cabinet paper that was taken through in December 2020, the financial position as forecast for this council at that point, at that stage of the pandemic, posed the question: is there any transformation bets that we could look to accelerate, that we could look to bring forward? And that was in acknowledgement that we had not yet started the meaningful transformation work. And what that paper posed, the answer to that question was, we could accelerate some of the staff reductions, but that would present risks and issues to the organisation, as we would be looking to release staff from the organisation in advance of the changes that we wanted to make, and in advance of the implementation of pay and reward. And on balance, at the time, given what we believed was the case of the pandemic's effect on the financial position of the organisation, the response was yes, we should go ahead and plan and deliver smart structures. So you know, it was acknowledged as an acceleration. The title of the paper was Accelerated Opportunities. It was not perfect. It's certainly not what I envisaged when we set out the vision for the transformation programme in November 2019. But it was a response to the position the organisation found itself in at the time as a result of the impact of the pandemic on our financial position.
Thank you, Mr. Osgood. I just want to, I know that Councillor Sandra Moore's been around forever, and so has Councillor Hadley. And I am also aware that Councillor Howell wants to speak, but not just yet, please, and also Councillor Burton.
Chair, can I just say that my point is directly related to the current discussion? But
okay, if you wouldn't mind, can I just, Councillor Lewis, Alison, if you want to just carry on.
Yeah, I've just got one more, so then you can carry on. So apologies that I've hogged quite a lot of the time. So the last question is, I'm quite acutely aware that there's been quite a lot of staff changes, especially at senior level. I know personally quite a lot of staff who have left, and I just wanted to know, to get some kind of idea on what kind of impact that's going to have in terms of not just financial, so in terms of the cost of making any of those staff leaving, whether or not any staff in this process are going to be made redundant, but also the incurred costs of rehiring people to replace them, but also to sort of kind of understand if there's any concern about sort of a loss of local expertise and local knowledge. And that's it from me, Chair. Thank you.
Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. There have been a number of resignations recently, with people either getting better jobs, primarily. We looked at the turnover levels. Actually, turnover was a pretty average over the period. We're 2.5 years into a new council. This is the sort of time when I would expect people to be either gaining benefit of the experience that they've got in the new roles, and then if they are ambitious, looking to move on. Well, I think with some, it may well be as well that the council is not quite what I expected it to be. It is much bigger than preceding councils. It's 400,000 population. Bournemouth, I think, it was about 180, Poole about 150, and Christchurch about 70. I don't know if that adds up or not, but it's a sort of scale. Also, it is much more complex. No overall control council is always a complex political environment in which to operate. My feeling is that it's a number of those things, that factors that are coming together. I'm not particularly concerned about the levels of turnover, but what we do have to do is make sure we have a fully functioning senior leadership team and make sure that leadership is clear and unambiguous in terms of direction within the organisation. So we will be looking to replace those that are leaving, mostly like for like replacements. And clearly that will take a bit of time. We've got to make sure we've got interim arrangements in place if that takes longer than notice periods, for example.
Thank you, Chief Exec. I'm going to bring in, I think Councillor Howe had a point specific to one of those questions. Do you want to come in now? And then I'll bring in the leader actually afterwards.
Yeah, I have other points which I'll stand in queue for, but it was just in relation to COVID and Brexit. We're in quite a turbulent job market at the moment in terms of, lots of industries struggling to find employees, and there's going to be wage inflation in a number of those. And I'd just like to ask Lucy to what extent she feels that the pay and reward structure might be undermined, now and in the near future by those dynamics.
Well, obviously, I feel the pay and reward outcome is going to be favourable for the organisation in the immediate term because, again, we rid ourselves of the equal pay risk that we sit with, and if all goes well, we become a market rate payer. So both of those things are helpful for our current workforce and our future workforce. We can be competitive alongside a modern fit for purpose set of terms and conditions. I mean, in terms of those external influences on the market, Mark, I think it is an incredibly fluctuating market, as has already been posed the question. We have seen that change and churn that is happening across all organisations at this point, post-pandemic as well. COVID and Brexit all adds extra complexities to that. So I'm not going to be one to speak above my areas of confidence and competence, because I think that all organisations are going to have to be very flexible and very agile. The outcome of the pay and reward, which I think was your question, how will that be flexible and adapt to some of those churn and changes? What we have factored for, and again, without getting into too much detail, because again, it's not agreed and we haven't got agreement with our unions that this is the model that we'll put in place. Although we have worked within a financially cost neutral envelope, we have got flexibility within that envelope to adapt for local market forces. So we have that already at the moment, although again, not consistently applied, but we call it labour market supplements. So you'll know, if there's a particular skill shortage, whether that's locally or nationally, we've got some flexibility to adjust some pay, which we do and we've done in the past. We know at the moment, drivers, particularly HGV drivers, are particularly sought after. We know there's a national shortage of social workers. We know engineers are like hen's teeth and really hard to find. So we are going to have to stay very close to those employment trends and make sure that we allocate that flexibility within our local forces supplements to make sure that we're able to attract the talent into the organisation and obviously retain it. But there is an accommodation for that within the solution that we're currently working on.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to bring in Councillor Andy Hadley, who's been waiting for a long time to speak. And Leader, I'll come back to you immediately after that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, if you wait long enough, then some of your questions tend to get answered, which is great. I wanted to come back to some of the comments actually the Chief Executive made right at near the top, which was around that often these sorts of transformations take 10 years, and we're hoping to do it in 5 years, and we have a very complicated council bringing the three/4 authorities together, and that we're digitally weak. And the ambition there, I think, is huge and a real risk to us in terms of our capability to deliver and our track record of delivery, actually, because we have weak systems, because of the history and potentially a very long period when the predecessor authorities weren't there. And I'm really struck by a comment I heard from the Chief Technology Officer of Boots, who said if they can't do something within 6 months, they don't do it. And in the public sector, probably more than in the private sector, we are so subject to change, to the government just tipping the world upside down and changing what we have to do at a moment's notice, that we really need to have really agile systems and solutions going forwards. And I'm not getting a warm feeling about that. I was pleased that Julian referred to the to things starting to shape together by September, but it's been a very long time coming, and particularly in terms of the user experience, the public's experience. The Cabinet Office of the government, and again, as a book that I shared details of with Julian, the Cabinet Office started with the user experience, and they actually either binned or connected existing systems. If you go to the banking sector, they have some really old creaky systems in the back office, but what they've really concentrated is on the very front. So my question, I guess, and it's probably to Julian, is in terms of, do we have the, and it's about the skills transfer and the sustainability, do we have a chief technology officer or chief information officer role within the structure and the senior technical leadership to actually deliver on the digital bit? Because every one solution right across the organisation is digital will solve it, and it really won't unless you have that beating heart at the centre. Thank you.
Mr. Thought. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hadley. I absolutely agree with the centre what you've just said. The caveat in our case, when you contrast us with some of the private sector organisations, is that we have too many old legacy applications, and we need to get to a point where we have a solid foundation where we can digitally innovate quickly. And if I use a very specific example, which I know is very dear to your heart from our previous conversations around things like geospatial tagging and reporting and the creation of service processes around something like pothole or fly tipping. We know we have, I think from memory, something like 29 different line of business application systems that have some or all of the capabilities that any organization would need in order to make that a modern, fit for purpose digital expense for its customers or users or residents. We have 29 of those, and those 29 applications cost us in the region of £500,000 a year. So what we need to do is get to a point where we have a single platform which is capable of supporting Rationalization, and that's where most of the effort and time has to go in the first instance. None of those 29 are probably the right one, if we're being honest with ourselves, and so the foundation of the first stages of the transformation program technically are about identifying the right platform so that we can create the environment, the stability, the opportunity to digitally innovate. In answer to your specific questions, yes, we have a CTO role that is currently occupied, and we are creating a CIO that get filled as we move through the program. The reason it hasn't been filled yet is because we are leaning quite heavily on the expertise, the capacity and capability that we have access to from KPMG and Agilicis to define the future of our aspirations from a data and insight perspective, and so we make sure that we create the role and fill it with the right person at the right time, and we don't incur unnecessary fixed cost within the organisation's cost base until we're ready and we can benefit from it specifically.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if I could just ask one very quick other question, which is in regards to the leader mentioned a diagram, a complex diagram in terms of the architecture. Do we have a roadmap? Do we have, beyond the 6 months, or perhaps the initial piece, do we have something in terms of the priorities and which order we expect to build this beast in?
That's being worked on now. We should have that in the next 4 weeks, Councillor Hadley.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Leader, I understand you want to speak now, in which case, if that is correct.
Moved on, Chair, so happy for expediency to stand that down.
Okay, thank you. I think Meliel, please. And we're going to. I think you're going to be asking questions about accommodation.
No, I was just going to say, I think all my questions have been asked by non-community members, so I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Councillor Gabriel.
All my questions been answered. Thank you.
Sorry, I missed that. I was distracted. Sorry, Councillor Gabriel.
Oh, sorry. All my questions have been answered. So thank you.
Councillor Richard Burton, you had a question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Actually, it's probably a good question, is it? And like everybody else, questions have been coming to me and have been answered as we're going through. And one of these questions I think has been answered, but I just want to check the answer. I mean, firstly, the first bit, digital. I'm quite a fan of digital. I think because my ward, people are quite digitally literate. A few problems at the moment. Primarily, the feedback that I'm getting is that when people engage digitally, they're not happy with the initial response they get, the automatic response. They find it quite overhand, and they don't get feedback when things have happened. I'm simple things like reporting bins that are over full, dog poo bins that are over full netting. And I was wondering whether that will be is in line to be changed. And you mentioned September for the website to be all. Is that for all areas? I'm asking this because my ward's peculiar in that it's part legacy Bournemouth and part legacy Poole, and at the moment it's very difficult for residents to find things like planning. They're totally different. It's difficult for me to find out, and of course of people move, and so rather than I could say, look outside, see what's written on your bin. If it says Bournemouth, you get to the website. If it says Poole, you go. A lot of them say BCP now, and they've moved into the area and they haven't got a clue. My second bit is totally different. It is the staffing. Let's look at the maths. We're talking about 10 to 15% redundancies within BCP of all staffing. And we do know that the R services, and we mentioned children's services, I'm particularly interested, you probably know. We're looking at social workers as a shortage. I'm guessing there's also a shortage in planning and funding staff, managing telephones. How are we drawing people that we really need to keep, that we're going to keep them?
Is that a question for you, Mr. Thorpe, or is it?
That's fine. I will attempt to respond. So I think with regards to the first part of your question, Councillor Burton, the September deadline is for the single source of information provision on the website. And the reason I say this is because I think there's a difference between that and some of what you said, which is once you drill down beyond or below the provision of information into the transactional aspects of the web presence, and that is not being harmonised in September. That's back to the 12-month horizon that I referred to earlier. The reason for that is we need to implement, design and implement a single what is referred to in the operating model report of November 2019 as the digital front door. At the moment, we have 3 digital front doors, which are kind of hidden underneath a core general web. And then there are 3 transactional engines. We need to replace all of that, and that's what we're anticipating doing over the next 12 months, or beginning to materially introduce that and replace the 3 legacy transactional engines. So that's a little bit longer than September. The second part of your question refers to the level of staffing reductions and the nature of those staffing reductions. And there's never an easy way to talk about this. We've been very candid and very honest, very publicly honest since November 2019 when we published the organisational design report, which had its high estimate as, I think you're right, just over 15% potential reductions in FTE, not necessarily headcount, but full-time equivalents over the course of the programme, the 4-year programme. When you get on the surface of that, and if you look at the organisational design, the operating model report, what that report argues is that it's not the the frontline service staff that we are anticipating losing. As you've said, our shortages, as Lucy has said, in many of our professional frontline areas and customer services. That's not what we're looking to reduce from the organisation. If you go right back to the Ali's journey video, I apologise to those. I think that was either helpful or appropriate, but I agree with the chair. It was intended as an aspirational statement rather than an indication of where we are now or will be next month. One of the points I made following that video was that at the moment, in order to support those individual outcomes, the types of outcomes that you see in that video, we have to have a lot of people joining a lot of dots and making sure that the customer experience does not fall down cracks in the organisation. And I hope I'm not being too sensational by using that phrase, but the cracks in the organisation which exist as a result of the way we've come together through the local government reorganisation process. So we have large teams of business support staff, we have large teams of systems administration staff, we have staff moving data, manipulating it and importing and exporting it from systems. It's those roles which we would expect to lose once we have a designed and architected organisation which has less need for that highly manually intensive work to keep everything going. That's the product of the local government reorganisation journey that we're looking to transform out of the organisation. Now, that doesn't make it any easier proposition or any easier message, because these people are all colleagues. And as Lucy has already said, we are working really hard to retrain, develop them, make sure that there are alternative roles within the organisation. We have a very robust redeployment process, which operates for a period of time before anyone is made redundant, unless they're offered voluntary redundancy, of course. So we're doing everything we can to make sure we don't lose people we don't want to lose. And the final point I make is that 15% reduction in full-time equivalent was intended to happen over the course of that 4 years. And when you think that we tend to run somewhere between 8 and 10% natural turnover anyway, and it's never perfect, but the reason for that 4-year horizon was to give us absolutely the best opportunity to use that natural turnover to result in the organisation contracting naturally rather than through a forced way. The difference between what we'd originally envisaged in November 2019 and the circumstances we found ourselves in December 2020, which ties to the Smarter Structures programme. I hope that helps.
Thank you. Councillor Sandra Moore, you've been extremely patient. Are you there?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm here still. Yeah, well, I would like to ask questions about office accommodation for staff. I know what's happening at Poole Civic Centre, the Town Hall and the Bournemouth Learning Centre to receive that information. However, the predecessor councils also owned or rented lots of other buildings, and I don't know what's happening to them in the future. I appreciate some of this might well be classed as operational, but when buildings are in my Camford Heath ward, for example, my residents do ask questions and I don't always know the answers. And the example I'm thinking about is that ECPS used to work from Newfields House and Stinsford Road. That's now empty, but where are the staff that can't work from home? I would also like to query the accommodation for staff in children's services, because that's an area that's quite dear to my heart as well. And a great deal of work is going into raising standards in children's services, but where are staff going to work from if they can't work from home? I do think it would actually help improve staff morale if they had good and decent accommodation to work in. I assume that the offices in the Dolphin Centre, in Poole and Commercial Road will remain in use, but what about next door's Holly Lodge, the listed building next door? Is that staying or is it going? And there's two Edwardian, well, I think they're Edwardian, they're pretty old anyway, houses that are used by that were used by predecessor Bournemouth Council for children's services staff, I don't know if they're owned or if they were rented, but will usage continue? Are they fit for purpose in a modern council? I could go on with more examples like this, but I do think it would be really helpful if councillors like me had some idea as to what building staff were actually occupying and going to occupy across the BCP council area if they're not based in the future Bournemouth Civic Centre. It would also be really helpful and useful to know which buildings were being sold or no longer rented, and what were the financial implications of all that going to be? The sale price, the rental saved, the rental charged, all that sort of thing. That's the sort of information I would like to know, and I would like more information on. I don't suppose you could answer the questions now, but perhaps you could let me know whether there will be a future paper on office accommodation across the BCP area along the lines I've just outlined. Thank you, Chair.
I'm lucky today to answer that. Thank you, Councillor Moore. You've raised a number of issues and I'll do my best to respond to them, some of which I can answer and some of which I'm afraid I can signpost you to what will happen in the future. So I guess I would start the response by referring back to Cabinet paper in February 2020, I think, from memory, which advised the office accommodation BCP Council inherited as a result of the local government reorganisation process. And by that, what I mean is the three civic offices, so Poole Civic, Christchurch Civic, and Bournemouth Town Hall. And what that showed was that each of those on any given day, and we did the monitoring over 3 separate days, different times, we were only occupying those buildings to roughly 42%. So clearly there is a need and an opportunity to provide for BCP Council modern, fit for purpose accommodation working environments, as you've said, and that is our intent. The current phase of estates and accommodation program is focused on refurb the BC Civic Centre, formerly known as the Bournemouth Town Hall complex, so that it can abase the office-based staff who were previously allocated to one or more of, because some of us were allocated to one or more of, Bournemouth Town Hall, Poole Civic Centre and Christchurch Civic offices. And the financial considerations for that were set out in the Cabinet report, which set the estates and accommodation programme budget and the savings, which Adam has already configured into the medium-term financial plan. What happened while we've been in flight with that project is that the opportunity to surrender the lease on fields became advisable, say. So that was added to the scope while we're in flight. In addition, we are working to relocate and modernise as a result the library facilities in Poole and Christchurch, and that includes the office space previously by children's services within the Dolphin Centre. So they will have access to that, absolutely, once it's done. It won't be exclusively this, it will be drop-in space for all BC Council employees, but it will be significantly modernised, including a fit-for-purpose air handling system, which is COVID compliant, which it didn't have previously. While all that is happening, and as I said earlier, we're expecting that to conclude by March in 2020, we have commissioned the next phase of work, which is you're posing now. So outside of those core offices, those core administration bases, what do we need to do with some of the satellite offices, many of which are in former residential premises which are not fit for purpose. So we are coming to that, but I don't have definitive answers for you as we sit here today. That work is ongoing. And just finally, the question you posed raised about weapons if staff are unable to work from home, or the home environment is not suitable to support home working. Now, we haven't, there's a difference between what we're proposing and what we were forced to reconcile ourselves to through the pandemic. We have never said that staff will be compelled to work from home. What we've said is we will offer choice for people to do the work in the space which they believe is the most appropriate for the work they are doing. If they need to be in the office to collaborate with others, there will be collaborative spaces within those office environments. If their home environment is not suitable to support them working at home for any reason, there will be modern, fit for purpose, appropriate desking available for them. If they don't want to, or the work they're doing is not suitable for open plan desking, there will be private desking spaces which are available for them to book for periods of time. So I'm confident that the response that we set out in February 2020 was pre-pandemic, even though it is significantly because of the impact on the pandemic. I've got every confidence that we are creating a modern, fit-for-purpose office environment in work, which all members of staff will find meets their needs, whatever those needs may be.
Thank you. I think, Mr. Richards, did you want to come in on this one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to offer a councillor a little bit more by way of reassurance, if the council disposes of a property that it owns, either by way of freehold or leasehold, and the capital value is greater than £500,000, then that is a council decision.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Councillor Lawrence there.
Thank you, Chair. I came today to really excited about this agenda. Learn, and I think really good debate. Been lots of different points of view. And for me, it was the 3 bullet points that we had in our agenda and how we're getting on with those. So for our new organisation design, in my view, from what I've heard, it's fresh, and from the debate, this is the way we are going to move forward. It seems to be in the 21st century. I explained at the start, this is a mammoth task, and there's to overcome, and this has never been done before, and this is going to be something that I believe all of us can be praying years. Where and how we work, the experience that we now regards the phone call situation, getting in contact with the council, will not be the same in 4 or 5 years' time. We know this, and it's supporting our officers. It's just down to us to support that transition and be part of that. I'm very pleased knowledge transfer. Know this, and please, if you don't, go away and find out some more. It's a fantastic tool. This will save much time and money and accelerate the transformation process. The process is used much in private sector and helps businesses to. So I'm pleased that leading the way in that regard and using that technique. Supporting our colleagues, Councillor Alice touched on that earlier, some really good points. It's brilliant that we have the unions involved and hearing their thoughts. Our staff are our most vulnerable, and how they're raising to this challenge, in my personal view, is fantastic. I see that up close at the coalface, on the ground, in my ward every day, and around Accommodation. None of us are under any illusions that this was going to be easy. I believe we should thank the leader of the council, the officers, the unions, and all staff for their dedication and work rolling out this transformation over the next 5 years. So I'd just like to record, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. Councillor Howell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm assuming that the video, the 2 examples in the video were approved by the administration and officers. But I'm just a bit lost. I'd like to have questions about how much this is going to creep into people's lives, the computerization, systemization of transformation. You know, first, in an example, you know, if the systems get to know whether your bin has been collected, then the only way that can practically have a chip in a bin that is so we have to have that kind of reporting back mechanism, and I wonder if there are other examples where will get pulled in, perhaps 5G, into reporting information back to the council. On the second example, it's an Alexa type machine that was introduced to help somebody. Can we have some assurances that no data that is collected by those machines will end up in the hands of third parties, the tech companies? In particular, people won't be obliged to sign up to terms and conditions with such tech companies, or which forces them to the donation to the tech companies as a consequence requirement signing up for the services. Second question is in relation to the amount of money that we leave this maintaining these computer systems and paying the providers, the maintainers of those who inevitably in most cases will be multinational companies, probably leakage from the UK as well as the local economy. It would be really interesting to know how much money we anticipate on a daily basis leaking in that way. And the final question is in relation to requirements to open these different software rights to competition, and how to deliver a coherent system. How do you manage the fact that ideally, if you're on a coherent system, you engage one supplier, but aren't constantly required to put each of these units out to competition? Thank you.
The there's probably about 10 questions there on three, but the three main areas of questioning. I don't know if you can answer all of those, Mr. Osgood.
I'll try, and please let me know if I'm not, Councillor Howell. I think the general point you're making about the impact of technology and its inclusion in the future of service design, and whether or not that's a welcome thing or not. I think that's something we're going to have to reconcile as an organisation, as a local authority, and we won't be doing it in isolation. All local authorities are wrestling with these issues, whether it is chips and bins, as you say, and I would hasten to point out that it's not by having a chip and bin with no bins amiss. We know whether people's bins are amiss now because they call and tell us. Or the use of Alexa similar devices within domiciliary care. That is an active conversation nationally now. The video was not intended to state categorically that these are solutions that we will adopt as a local authority, as BCP Council, and they could not be adopted, in my view, and I'm the senior information risk owner for the council, without the appropriate controls in place, even if they were the proposed solutions for those particular services. So I share general concern about not going too far too fast without the appropriate consents and controls, but I don't think it's a position that we need to worry about as we sit here today. I think the second point, with regards to, I think it was about the ongoing maintenance, support and development of the core systems we choose to implement in order to support the transformation, and to support, configure and improve those ourselves as BCP Council. We're internal teams. There is nothing in the agreements or the strategic partner agreement with KPMG that will transition support obligations to them. It will be an internal. It will be internally supported and developed. we've been very clear about that it is not an outsourcing agreement in any way. It is an implementation agreement. I think it's slightly more difficult to try and quantify or you put forward in terms of our relationship or relationships with the challenges that we have to, and forgive me in your mouth, but to rely on open source type competition to provide the core applications or systems infrastructure that we need to function the way we need to function. Whether any of us like or not, we are beholden to certain very large global software houses, and there is no doubt that we will have annual licensing payments to them, which in many people's eyes will be too significant, but which we are required to procure and meet according to central local government frameworks. So in terms of the ongoing support provision, I don't think we'll be bleeding money out of the local economy. We'll be using staff, but there is no getting away from the fact that we need to have relationships with large global software houses. We will seek to minimise that. Part of the ethos, many of the assumptions behind the operating model and the organisational design, in particular the technical architecture that sits behind it, is that we need to significantly rationalise the number of those relationships that we have in order to reduce the financial and technical footprint. And as I said around half an hour ago, we currently have up to 29 different of these things, looking to condense that down to one or two. So my comment would be we can't avoid it, given our scale and complexity and the challenges we have, but we will have significantly smaller cost expense those large software houses at the conclusion of the transformation journey than we do currently.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that reassurance, particularly with regard to the second point there. I'm a bit concerned by the way you that there's no need to worry about issues of disclosing data. I mean, I can think back to time at the very start of this authority, when we had meetings in council meetings, full council meetings in the city, and in order to get onto the internet there, we had to agree to the terms and conditions of Sky, and nobody had thought about that from a council perspective in terms of councillors having to agree to disclose data to participate in meetings, etc. So there is sufficient going into how residents' data will be managed in the future. I mean, in terms of the point about competition, I think what you're saying is, I mean, I freely accept that, we live in a world, unfortunately, where we're dealing with an oligopolies really, and can't engage small businesses or medium-sized businesses in provision, and that's a very dangerous dynamic in society. But it seems to be saying that we will end up with a number of packages from different major suppliers, and that those suppliers are already kind of working together to fix the market, so their systems work with each other's systems. So what we really have is quite a cosy little force to join. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor McCormack.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions that mainly revolve around the estates topic. The first one being I was wondering whether there'd be an opportunity for a site visit to the Bournemouth Town Hall for certain members to see exactly where we're at with the it's more to do with the inclusion of information from other committees. So, for example, the Home identified that dealing with street homeless at the customer service desk is probably not the best location, and whether we've been able to, through transformation, deal with that in a better way. Then I was wondering if you could just give some more details around the future of the Christchurch and Poole civic offices, and in a bit more detail than what's given so far regarding the futures of those options being presented, and what discussions had around that. Then my final one is around access to those services that the council provides. So, for example, in Christchurch, it's okay that those services are provided in the library, but in my ward specifically, which is a good example, I have a high number of housing issues which the housing department deal with, and we would have a housing officer sit at the local community centre once a week, and they would deal with issues very quickly. Now I've had that service withdrawn in my ward, I'm finding that they're calling 4, 5, 6 times, which is not what you read in terms of efficiency. Whether officers that are told they can work from home would now have the option to come and work within the community rather than being at home, because they can still carry out their job within the community.
Mr. Oscar,
I'll do my best. I may forget one of them, so just jog me. So the answer to the first question is, at the moment we're not able to facilitate site visits because of the nature of, well, the fact that it's a construction site, and as well as the COVID regulations. We have previously I could look to it on the internet for the best solution in that regard. With regards to your second point, I'm not 100% clear, so it might be worth if you could email me more details separate to this conversation, and I can pick that up with you. I'm not 100% clear what it is you're driving at council, but certainly my goes. I expect us through the transformation journey to be facilitating offices outside of the pandemic and its constraints on the way we can operate and interact with people. I would expect offices to be delivering their service where the optimum place is, and if that is either in a library or in a community centre or somewhere, the whole point of the transformation program, freeing offices up from being constrained to a physical location and allowing them to be effective wherever that service needs to be delivered. Yeah, I would certainly envisage that would be the future for all of our services, not just the housing one that you referred to specifically.
Thank you. Councillor Slade.
Chair, I'm really grateful to Oxford in their attention for the asking lots of questions, but I think it's been a combination of lots and lots of things happening. I'm going to keep it really, really simple. Can I take it back to people? I talked about the account, right from the beginning. We knew there's going to be a drop head count. You've said that the numbers of the turnover rate was average. What worries me a little bit is not the numbers but the who, and I'm really concerned about the lack of the T's, the experience and the knowledge, both the geographical and cultural knowledge that we're losing, and the replacement of a lot of those people with interims. And I know interims can be really useful and they can bring real dynamic sort of energy, but quite a few of those people are very remote, tend to be an interim to permanent, and they're staying somewhere else, and that serves one purpose. But I worry a little bit. What does that do to an organisation when the staff who are here are in flux, and the strategic direction is a bit dislocated because they're coming for a period, fix something, and then move on? The two questions I've got is, I'm getting the impression that there are people who are unhappier at this stage than we thought they would be. And is fair, and what can we do to offer that assurance? And the second thing is, if we have got fairly senior people we're having to bring in as interims, and I think it's fair to say it isn't a particularly attractive option at the moment, join BCP Council at this point. So as I understand it, we aren't having people flocking for the jobs that are available. If my assessment of that is correct, how are the recruitment costs and the short-term staff costs impacting on the budget? And what is that doing to the ability to trade locally? Because you need to be in a same physical space to learn. And if your management, I mean, we've got some really good middle to senior managers who I believe, as we went into this process, had loads of potential. That potential's been slightly undermined, and I'm not sure whether the remote and interim nature is actually going to help them. So I'm really looking for reassurance about how we move forward, and whether we, a year, 2 years down the line, come out of this with a successful organisation. And I realise that's really difficult to say in a public meeting, but that's where I'm most worried, actually, because if we don't have people that really bought into the journey, how are they going to take everyone else with them, and how are they going to keep positive throughout this whole thing?
Thank you. Okay, I was going to ask the leader if he wanted to come in on this one.
Yeah, Chair. Yeah, absolutely, really happy to. So there were two questions there. One, are people unhappier than we expected them to be? Absolutely not. You know, this is a really complicated change management, organisational change management programme, and there will be, you know, significant stress in any organisation that happens like this. For those of us who've got a little bit more experience in that, this, you know, I would say this isn't of any surprise. One thing I would really, you know, more passionately disagree with was about saying the question, isn't it attractive, a place to be? You know, I think what we're actually seeing, we're seeing some of the best and the brightest people across the country really interested in our senior positions, and you know, the calibre of some of the people we're being able to recruit is really quite exceptional. So, you know, in terms of is it an attractive place to be, I'd say absolutely it is. And I think I started my introduction by saying this is the most exciting programme in local government. You know, KPMG and Agilitas have decided to come together on this programme because it is the most exciting programme in local government. So yeah, I have comfort. I think the pay and reward piece of work that's been going on is excellent, and you know that will bring some further level of assurance. What will also help in terms of assurance of people is the fact that we're doing a smarter structures piece of work, but then at that point we're not looking at making any more major staff redundancy based changes until the benefit of the transformation programme is delivered. If we go back to the video, you start seeing some of the really positive ambitions of where we might want to get to, what type of organisation this might look like. It's seeing some of those, you know, really positive, ambitious, you know, aspects of what a truly modern, world-class organisation looks like. That gets people excited about being part of it. So ultimately, you know, no, I don't think people are unhappy than we expect. I'm absolutely adamant that this is a really entirely attractive place to be.
Thank you, Leader. Could I bring the Chief Exec in?
Thanks, John. Just some of that. I think some of the things we're talking about here are actually pretty standard, and we're catching up with others. So private sector organisations, working offices, mostly large executive flurry of personal assistants outside you from talking to anybody that really provides services. So a lot of the steps that we're taking are actually, you know, reasonably normal. Take as we can, and I think that's where risk and tension comes. But you know, I haven't had this for probably a decade. Town hall, civic centres. We are trying to catch up in some places, that's at the beginning, and then accelerate and try and push it as far as we can. So I think some of that tension is unsettling for people. There are people who generally worked in open plan before, haven't worked with single function devices. Four or five individuals were allowed to keep individual printers. Now, that's not the way the modern office environment works. So we are trying to get to the modern office environment and take that to slightly further. I think COVID has actually changed people's perceptions. There are a number of people realising that they don't need to be in the office all the time to work. There are some for whom home doesn't work, and we need to accommodate those. But they're equally. I was told by a number of directors in February 2019, no, February 2020, 1 month before COVID, I can't because of COVID, etc. By May, they were perfectly content working from home, and they'd found out how to do it. So I think we are accelerating. So that put tension in the organisation. I'm sure that does make some people uncomfortable because change at the moment is more rapid than I think. So that there is some tension in that, but actually I think it's right in terms of our aspirations and what we've seen on Regeneration is a desire for people to see the difference. We're already seeing different conversations about the regeneration we were having months ago. So CEOs are high. I get the stress that will be uncomfortable for people, but equally we're seeing, we've got appointments, and we're seeing the extra skill set from some of those people.
Thank you, Chief Executive.
With all due respect, neither of you have even answered the question. I'm really not concerned about whether you've got a private office or not, and whether people are comfortable working from. I have had members of staff on a path that they're not comfortable with. That's not. I'm not talking about people having to use a multifunction printer. I'm not talking about the counting out of date, and I'm sorry for getting agitated, but I think the leader's absolutely outrageous in what he's just said. Ultimately, we are which are not being competitively with a simple process, really important jobs. You'd expect there to be a really, and we're not seeing that. We're seeing rushed things happening, being on a member panel at 24 hours notice, so we can't plan for it. We don't know anything about the people that we're being asked to sit on a panel for. We're taking on people who are visiting occasionally, and I just don't understand how a bunch of people to this area can feel supported when the people that are coming as interims just with the way staff are reporting there now, and I this but that because we have residents who were reporting it back to us. Sorry, but I don't think it's about private offices and multifunction printers.
Leader, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thanks very much, Gerald. Would love to respond. I've very clearly, if you go back to the footage, you actually said, so the question is about are people unhappy and is it not attractive? And I answer those questions really fully. So Councillor Slade is wrong. And I guess to some extent, if there's a level of, we've got to appreciate there will be some uncomfortableness in change. We're trying to do something quite amazing, and that's not great for everybody. The status quo is not what we're after. What we're after is being an exemplar authority, and that's exactly what we're going to deliver. And the Chief Exec quite rightly said the standard of some of the discussions we're having, and also evidence base. Even if you just take Regeneration as an example, the fact we've got the paper before us later, and the speed and quality at which some of that work has been done is in an entirely unable to do before. So if you're uncomfortable, I hear that, and thank you for your feedback. I am not uncomfortable.
Thank you, Leader. So it's I'm not going to take questions from myself. It's the best till last. I was reading about the Centre of Excellence for an example that we'll have in our new operating model, and I just wondered if we made any progress toward, and is that a step too far when we think of commissioning the sort of health services and children's services in one particular commitment? It do ambition. That's what I'm talking here from KPMG. I just wondered if she might, or somebody give a brief about the whole of the strategic implementation program. Its working group and the project team itself. I think so. One is to you, Julian.
Thank you, Chair. It is a great question, and I think we pack it a bit to help everyone understand what we're talking about. So, if I'm giving another micro example, like the 20 applications that we have around geospatial tagging and organizational design work, that, for instance, there's one provider, a combination provider, we have more than 20 separate commercial relationships with one organization, which sounds outrageous, but when you think each of the preceding councils, commissioning services, and then within each of those legacy councils, in many cases, housing committedly, you can begin to understand where context comes from. So what we're talking about in terms of the development of a single commissioning and procurement centre of excellence is a number of really key points. So firstly, is we should have a single commissioning cycle for BCP Council, and I'm not going to go into the detail what a commissioning cycle is, but in essence what that means is at the heart of the organisation we do the work to understand what our resident place, what the requirements are, like the joint strategic needs assessment, or surveys and engagement with residents and our visitors. So a single commissioning cycle would still be dedicated areas, so adult social care, children's social care, housing, procurement, strategic procurement specialists, and each of those dedicated specialists will be responsible for and then feeding those in a single commissioning cycle, so that we can make choices, better choices, more informed choices about what we commission from, for, what, and when. Now that doesn't mean we will only commission once to try and meet, but what it does mean is that we's ability and the opportunity to, sometimes that might be a single commissioned relationship, sometimes it might be multiple commissioned relationships, but at the moment we haven't got that opportunity, and not having that opportunity is leading to complexity, cost, which is what we're trying to avoid. The second point, and this is based on feedback from other partners, public and voluntary, now that we're BCP Council, referred to our scale, they want to have commissions, whether that's to the CCGs, the acute trusts. it's not in their interest, certainly not in ours, for there to be multiple commissioning conversations going on across the Government of Excellence with a commissioning cycle, but which respects the professional experts. Then hoping we comes then we've inherited through the local government reorganisation process.
Yeah, and our strategic implementation, would it be appropriate if we ask them to say a few words about what they're doing and how they're interfacing with the rest of the team? Ruth?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So things that we're supporting through the conversations today. So we've got teams that are working really closely with the transformation team, but also with a number of officers across the council. And the work that we've supported to date, which the leader outlined earlier, was around designing what that programme is going to look like for the next few years, so that we're really clear about how we can achieve the transformation of this complex programme in an enhanced period of time in line with the council's ambitions. And we've also been supporting in relation to understanding that energy architecture, so what you've currently got and what you need in the future to be able to achieve those ambitions. So they're the two key pieces of work in the 4 months that have been completed, and then we're now supporting particularly with the third end and the Procurement and Commissioning Centre of Excellence, whilst considering the forward pieces of work. I think it's fair to say that the way that we're working together is that the governance that was outlined within the procurement process and the documents is well established and well with transformation boards and transformation steering groups. So it feels as though we are establishing as a joint team to deliver this transformation together with the right level of challenge and rigour.
Yeah, really sorry. I'm really sorry at the end that we difficulty as the band seem to have been breaking up a bit, but just most of it. But I don't know if there's, maybe I could ask Mr. Oscarthorpe just because we were really losing you in there, Ruth. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so I think, sorry, Ruth. Words in your mouth for you. So is for the first 3 months of work, what we've been doing is the detailed design of how we're going to implement the programme in order to deliver the transformation. And we know everyone has acknowledged today that that's going to be over the next, principally over the next 2 years, the transition to be doing this aspect of your question around third-party spending commissioning. We've been working really hard to set and commissioning arrangement in order to crowd over the next 4 years. The space like to pressure off the staff and things, the transformations or savings that Adam expressed earlier from that commission and procurement spend. That work has been concluded in September, so that into the budget setting cycle, medium term refresher for February Cabinet and Council.
Thank you. Well, I've got some more questions, but we've run out of time, so I hope everybody has found that useful. I certainly found it very this programme. I wish we had a little bit more visibility on it from a member's perspective in terms of project plans or come along at some point with more detail of it. I think it would to maybe do this again, maybe in 6 or a year, even. Not quite sure when. But I'm sure that we can plan for maybe something. So with that, and knowing that he needs to get something to eat before we start the next session at 6 o'clock, I'd like to thank everybody that's joined us today, particularly members of the public, officers, and thank you very much.